Of Wednesday, February 26, 2020. Could I ask everybody please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So before we get started with the order of the agenda in front of you, just three quick announcements and change of order. We are going to have Mr. Bishop come up and talk to us about the van driver benefits under appearances after the ELA committee. And then there are two items on our agenda that are being moved to our next meeting on March 11th. It is the FY20 budget update and then also the school committee legislative advocacy discussion. Okay. But first we have approval of minutes. We do have a couple of sets of minutes in our packet. The easiest one to approve is probably the business meeting from February 5th, because then in the green we do have two sets of executive sessions, but there are two parts to each executive session that we'll want to approve separately. But maybe we want to do the business meeting of February 5th first.
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous. And then if we look at the executive session ones of February 5th, there's 2 pages. Page 1 was before Ms. Smith joined us, and that was when we were discussing Unit A contract. And then page 2 is when we were all together discussing the superintendent. So I was thinking we should probably approve page 1 and 2 separately. Is there a motion to approve the first page?
So moved?
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Wait, sorry.
That's the one that you want to abstain.
Okay.
You were not there.
Because all of mine are just enabled 1. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Okay.
keep track of all our
All right.
executive sessions.
So this is my abstention.
Okay, so Mara abstains. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then on page 2, same night, February 5th, we were all there discussing the superintendent contract.
Motion to approve.
Okay, all in favor? Second.
Seconded.
And then all in favor.
Aye.
5-0, great. And then the final set of minutes, Wednesday, February 12th, also executive session. This time on the first page, we were all present and discussing the superintendent's contract.
I thought we just approved that.
No, this is February 12th. We're on a different date
Oh,
now.
okay.
Different green sheet.
Yeah. So is there a motion to approve page 1 of February 12th?
Motion.
So moved.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, good. Let Dave do it. I'll
Motion to
second.
approve.
And second by Maya. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Abstain? No, you weren't there. Oh, no, you were there. Sorry.
This
I'm
is the right
confusing
one.
myself.
Okay. Well, I'm just looking at you being like, can I?
We're just having way too many executive sessions, basically
am
what is
I?
happening up here.
5-0.
Yes, 5-0,
Yeah.
sorry. And
why I'm not
then
making any
page 2,
motions.
Mara excused herself, and we discussed Unit A contract. So motion to approve page 2 of February 12th.
So moved.
Okay,
I'll
second.
second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
4, abstention.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Dr. Thompson, do you have any correspondence this evening?
No, we do not, Madam Chair.
All right, moving right along to our warrants. I do have a different copy of the warrants than we had in our packet, so the amounts that I'm going to read might be a little bit different than what you see in front of you. But we do have a number of warrants to sign tonight. First is in the amount of $7,485.76 for accounts payable. Second for $9,778.44 accounts payable. Third, $9,429.32 accounts payable. $7,646.02 accounts payable. $7,619.09 accounts payable. $3,764.04 accounts payable. $21,589.83 accounts payable. $15,824.09 accounts payable. Then we have 2 buildings and grounds warrants. First in the amount of $20,628.49, and the second in the amount of $19,844.91. And then we have 2 food services warrants. First in the amount of $165, second in the amount of $2,983.70, for a grand total of $126,750.69. At this time, I invite anybody who's here to speak to us in public forum to come forward. Okay, seeing none, I declare public forum closed. Dr. Thompson, do we have any announcements?
We do not.
Okay, then moving right along to appearances.
Yes, we have two outstanding students with us this evening. I will call Sean up first because you're early on the agenda, so if you, we're going to embarrass you, so you could come on up here and stand up over here. So this is Sean Chisholm, and Sean, I am presenting the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Award to. Sean is a hard worker, an avid volunteer, and involved in his Norwood High School community. While always putting academics first, Sean is ranked #1 in his class with a 4.87 GPA, and currently takes 5 AP classes with 1 honors class. Beyond his academics, Sean is most notably an active member of our Global Citizens Program, treasurer of his class for the past 4 years, and a participant in the Model UN, and also a Mustang mentor as well. Sean has been involved in all facets of life at Norwood High School and is very deserving of this recognition. So it is my pleasure to present to Sean this first award for outstanding achievement. All done.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask Bernice, I'm going to embarrass you, you can come on down next. This is Bernice Pierre. Bernice is a highly motivated and determined student, and students like this do not come around very often. She is a strong leader among her peers, a positive, respectful member of her senior class. Bernice is mature, thoughtful, conscientious, and committed to her academics and community. A dedicated student with diverse skill set, it is truly impressive that she's able to effectively balance the demands of a busy extracurricular and work schedule while maintaining top rigor in the classroom. She has been committed to pursuing a career in nursing. Bernice has a very clear vision of her future, and she has spent every free moment in high school participating in programs such as the Student Healthcare Explorers Program in order to expand her knowledge of the nursing career. She was just accepted to Northeastern School of Nursing and will be attending in the fall. If you see Dr. Giblin there, you have to say hi to her. Bernice is involved in many aspects of our school community. She is a Mustang mentor, co-vice president of Students Against, I was going to say drunk driving, but it's changed now. Students Against Destructive Decisions, treasurer of the Environmental Youth Coalition, secretary of National Honor Society, member of the Student Council, Model UN, Global Citizens, Impact Norwood, Friendship Club, Medical Cadet Corps, and Pathfinder program through her church, in addition to working part-time at CVS. Bernice has been awarded many accolades, including the Brown Book Award, Student Council Volunteer Award, and Award of Excellence. So it's my extreme pleasure to present this award to you, Bernice.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
So our next appearance is our ELA committee.
All right, good evening, thank you for having us. I'm excited to share some updates on our progress and our recommendation for our ELA pilot. So as I mentioned last time, that I was here, which I think was right at the beginning of the school year. My work this year has been built upon the work of the ELA committee led by Dr. Wyeth and Mrs. Ferreira last year. And during the committee meetings, they identified important components of a district-wide ELA program and a strong vision statement. And I'm sure that you will agree that a core program will help Norwood Elementary students to become more skillful and thoughtful in their reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So just to review our process, it was a lengthy process, and teachers invested countless hours into learning about all 3 pilot programs. But we know that a strong curriculum implementation takes years, not months, so our work has only just begun. Just to review some of the things that we worked on, all teachers had outside professional development. They had many opportunities to improve their knowledge through this professional development. Additionally, they had opportunities to give a lot of feedback about all 3 programs through common planning time, through after school and early release professional development pilot meetings, and also by completing a rubric where they were able to not only assign a score to certain components, but also to provide qualitative feedback. There are many things that we want to look for in a really good, strong ELA program, and what we realize is that we have to take all of our values and the things that are important and kind of align them to certain priorities. And we can't look at everything that a program has because it has so many different components. So we narrowed our focus to zoom in on the things that were most important to our district, which is a strong alignment to our MAS frameworks and our Common Core standards, explicit writing, instruction grounded in text evidence, authentic and engaging content, differentiated instruction that meets the needs of our growing population of EL students and our students with disabilities, and then embedded grammar, vocabulary, and conventions. Teachers were worried about pulling things from so many different areas, and so that we wanted something that was included in the curriculum. So as we were gathering data, these were the 5 components that we really focused and honed in on. As I said, there were many opportunities to provide feedback, and there was a large amount of data over this process. So this is just a few of the many ways that we collected data from September until just last week. And I've already said this, but teachers did the heavy lifting. They did a tremendous amount of work sharing all of their strengths, concerns, and again, engaging in a lot of professional development. So I also have some data samples to share for you. I didn't give you all of the data. I think it would have been way too overwhelming to go through. I enjoyed it, but I don't know that everybody would have. So we had qualitative and quantitative data. Our qualitative data was in the form of teacher feedback, note catchers, walkthroughs, and then our quantitative data was connected to our rubric. In addition, I looked at our STAR Renaissance data and tried to identify the growth that students made from September until January in the different cohorts of the different pilot programs. We spent a lot of time on our February 12th Professional Development Day reviewing all this data with teachers. As you might be able to see on some of this data, many of the takeaways were just that the programs seemed to come out very similar, and that where there was a difference in scores among the programs, the margin was very small. So that was most of the feedback, but you can see that there were some areas where different programs pulled ahead or seemed stronger in some areas than others. So before I get to our recommendation, I just want to mention this. This is something that we've talked about a lot in terms of teachers, is that there is no perfect program. There is no unicorn. Teachers want this, program that's all wrapped up in one, where we don't have to do a lot of additional work and everything's going to be teacher friendly, and it just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for us. It doesn't exist anywhere. If it did, everyone would buy it, and there would be no programs to look at. So instead, we can't look for that unicorn program. We have to look for a strong workhorse of a program. Ultimately, our curriculum is the standards. How are we meeting the standards? And so we need a program that will work for us to help us meet those standards. And so we really had to focus on which program will work hardest for us as we do the hard work of helping students. And so on our February 12th PD day, we examined all of the data and narrowed our programs from 3 down to 2 by eliminating the program that seemed least aligned to our priorities. So that was a way to start. There were 60 plus teachers involved in this pilot process, so getting all of them to come to consensus on one single program is seemingly impossible.
That's good news, though.
And so we started by looking at all the programs and saying, is there one that we feel confident or comfortable as a group saying, this one is not going to get us where we need to go. And so we eliminated one program. Then we spent the majority of the rest of the time working on what's the work that needs to be done, because there is no unicorn program, to make either one of these other 2 programs work for us. And so teachers worked in grade level groups, and they said, okay, so if we adopt this program A, this is the work that we're going to have to do to make this best for Norwood students. And if we adopt program B, this is the work that we're going to have to do. And then we ran out of time because it was only a 2-hour PD. And so the next day, principals and reading specialists came together and represented their school and their views. And we looked at that work, and we ultimately decided that Pearson, my view, is the program that allows us to do the work that we need to do. So it's not a perfect program. There are no perfect programs, but it's giving us it's a strong workhorse for us, and it's going to give us an equitable program across all grades and across all schools in order to provide students with rigorous standards-based curriculum. So now we come to the implementation part. One thing that I neglected to put on your packets is just kind of the numbers. I gave a rough estimate here of what the numbers are. I think Dr. Wyeth can probably provide you with exact numbers. But I just want to talk a little bit about how a strong ELA program is not just what comes in that box. So one of the strengths of adopting this program from Pearson is that it gives us the ability to listen to what teachers are saying that our students need and provide that. So for instance, with my view, in the writing, my view suggests, and good teaching suggests, that when you're teaching a way of writing, you want to immerse your students in that type of writing first, right? So they have lots of examples of what are the elements of that writing. So this program has some examples that you could find. You could find maybe magazine articles, you could find internet articles, or you could purchase books that you know are strong examples of that. And so, so one of the things that My View does is it allows us within this purchase point to kind of supplement and buy those other materials that are going to make it even stronger. Additionally, a strong program is only as strong as its professional development, right? So we want to give a really strong, solid base of knowledge to all of our teachers. This is a program that we're going to have for 6 years, and we should invest in the appropriate and high quality professional development at the beginning, not just the first year, but for the first few years, to make sure that teachers have a really strong understanding of the program and are able to make it work for the kids in front of them. So we've already been working on what that strong implementation plan will look like. We can use the successes of the math rollout, and we can use teacher feedback to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all teachers. So teachers have been asked already, what do they see as necessary PD for year 1 and beyond? And I've tried to incorporate that into a strong implementation plan. One of the things that we know from any of the pilot programs, for instance, is that teachers said that none of the pilot programs met their expectations for really strong writing, which is a tribute, I guess, or that's attributed to how strong the teachers are here and how they feel that they really want to improve their writing. All 3 of the programs, from the program perspective and from my perspective, have strong writing programs, right? But Norwood teachers know that we need to really invest our time and energy in that, and so so they're saying, listen, we need additional professional development in writing. So that you'll see is in the plan that I've just showed you, the first six months of. I wanted to take a moment just to publicly thank all of these people. There are a lot of people on that slide. There are many, many teachers that are involved in this process, and hours of work that they've put in. Their work on this pilot is truly a service to the entire district. And so I've included members of the original committee as well as members of the pilot teachers on here. My hope is that throughout this process, teachers have felt heard and had their questions answered and are prepared and as excited as I am to move forward. And I hope that if you see these teachers around, that you will thank them for their service and all the hard work that they've done over the whole school year. And with that, I am seeking your approval, we are seeking your approval, to purchase MyView as our core program. This process has been exciting, and it's been a great opportunity for me to get to know the teachers and get a lot of feedback and get into their classrooms. But I know that that work is only just beginning for me, so I'm really excited to be here tonight because I know that this is just the first part of why I took this job and what makes me so excited about it, which is getting into classrooms and helping teachers to improve their practice. So that is all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions about the process, about the program.
Sure. So I love the implementation piece of it. So how do we catch up a teacher that just joins up and is not familiar with this program? How do they get that professional development? I mean, I know they can learn from their peers, but is there anything that they can do that this continues once they join up? They join our school system, if somebody's not familiar with it.
So for teachers so our hope right now is to have, 2 hours of professional development before the school year ends, some summer professional development work with me, and then that first day of September would be 6 hours of professional development. That's like the true, okay, here's what we need to do day to day. This is how everything works. So any new teacher to the system this summer would still get that 6 hours. Going forward,
Exactly.
I think there's two different ways that we can think about that. In the professional development budget, you can budget for a bundle of sessions. So let's say we want Pearson to come in 10 times over the next 2 years, right? So we have the flexibility to think about what are those times. So if we had a cohort of new teachers where there were maybe more than 3 or 4, then maybe it would make sense to have that person come in. If not, I would follow the model that Jill Milton has, and she sits down with teachers every school year. Any new teacher to the district, she sits down with them and fills them in because she's become an expert of the program, which is what I'm hoping. Additionally, Pearson is a very large company, and they have a really robust professional development online. So any teacher could access anything. You all could access any professional development training that you want, even request live webinars or live talking to someone.
Awesome.
So it's a pretty comprehensive way.
Thank you. That perfectly answers my question.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
But first, thank you for all your work. I know you've been really invested in this, and I like the analogy of there is no unicorn. We should probably apply that to many different things that we're working on. But a strong workhorse that is going to move us forward, right? So more just in my own professional background, not necessarily as a school committee member, but you identified one of the challenges is that we're concerned around it being developmentally appropriate in K and first grade. So just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, and then what do we do to ensure, I know there's the state standards and we could have a whole discussion around that another time, but what do we do for our youngest learners if we're saying already that we know this curriculum might not be as developmentally appropriate for our K and first grade as 2 through 5? What do we do? How do we, what is the plan, or what are you going to be looking at moving forward?
I think the plan, looking at the program overall, starting in the summer, is because when we looked at all 3 programs, there was everything and the kitchen sink in there. So teachers found it hard to figure out what is the essential and what is sort of extra. So I think we've been talking about, as a group, really digging in and looking at what is the essential core of this for everybody regardless. And the same thing will happen at the K-1 level. They may not start as soon as day 1. They may start later, but they have foundations, so there's a lot of work that can be around what's developmentally appropriate and what we need to do to get this in the, user-friendly for them, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll add to that. One thing that Stephanie has talked with the vendor about is this issue. And so we're going to try to find a kindergarten teacher to do the PD with our kindergarten staff. a Pearson kindergarten expert, with the understanding that we have this sensitivity to the material. And in addition, Pearson's well aware of this issue, not just from our perspective, but from other districts' perspective. So they're in the process of revising and updating their K-1 program. And they promise us that'll be coming forth pretty soon. As soon as that gets modified, we'll be taking it on, as part of our program.
I'll just add, I taught kindergarten and first grade, and I have a kindergartner and a first grader. So this is like super close to my heart, and I've had many conversations with the kindergarten teachers who have been really thoughtful in their feedback and professional in how we're talking about it. So yes, I have been advocating we need the very best early literacy trainers. I believe they're like bringing someone from the West Coast. They know that this is an issue. I've also been talking with districts that have adopted my view already, and so for instance, I think Berkeley Community Schools has adopted it, and they are having a really strong rollout in kindergarten and first grade. And so I've talked with that principal about, well, what do you think makes that, and can we go visit? And so we're hoping to set up some site visits. Additionally, I'm like, we could talk about this all night.
Sure.
I think that one of the things that Pearson also does, because it's a big program, it realizes that it can't meet the needs of every single district, or not that it can't meet the needs, but there's multiple ways, right? So one of the things that they have in kindergarten and first grade is, instead of doing the listening comprehension section of every unit, they have appropriate trade books that hit those same standards. And so one of the supplemental materials, like in that little pocket of supplemental materials money that I intend to purchase, will be asking teachers, like, what are those books where you can do an interactive read aloud that feels really much more developmentally appropriate? Everyone's sitting on the rug, starting to talk to each other and that sort of thing. So, so I think it's a valid concern of teachers, and it's one that I'm going to work tirelessly to make sure that it feels right for kids.
Okay, great.
We
And
had
then,
the same issue with Envisions Math,
Yeah.
when we adopted Envisions. And so what Jill did is move some lessons. We brought geometry and some hands-on stuff into the front. They were later in the trajectory.
Okay.
We brought them in the front so that they could be using their hands and playing more, as opposed to writing numbers so early in the year.
Okay.
So that can be, I don't know how that,
Yeah. And I already have 2 first grade teachers, and I think a couple kindergarten teachers who have said, like, yes, we're like ready to work over the summer and do some professional development and work with me to figure out what are the must-dos, and how do we make this feel, especially for the first 6 to 8 weeks of school, like, how do we make this feel really good for kids?
great. And then my second question is the population that you also identified that is growing with our ELL and our special education. Was Lori Semino involved in the process with this at all, making sure that this is a curriculum for those populations as well?
the special ed teachers at each school were present in using the program with,
Okay.
like, I know in my building, Andrew
Yeah.
Orlando looked at it. I know that Molly Cotter looked at it.
Okay.
In the other buildings, there are, Angelique Sheehan is special ed, there were special ed
Yeah.
teachers involved with
Mhm.
pilots.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the ELA committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah.
and then Lori and Dr. Wyeth and I had a conversation about when we're thinking about not only tier support, but tier 1 support, but tier 2 support and tier 3. So how, not only the core support, but then what does the program offer for those different tiers? We talked about what are the different components for those different tiers, and got her recommendations and her thoughts about what we would adopt from those. Like, for instance, the tier 3 program that goes with this is a computer-based program. Maybe that doesn't align necessarily with our philosophy of wanting our special education teachers to be working like really closely with kids.
Okay.
So she has been involved in the process, though not. She's very busy.
Yeah.
Not to the level that the special education teachers have been.
Okay.
So, and for ELL, I have worked with. I've been to a couple of the EL meetings. I've worked alongside Kate Platt at Prescott and Elizabeth Goldberg. They both provided a lot of feedback. This particular program has a really strong, they made it into like an additional book for us. It's normally online, but they printed it out for us, but just supports for ELs that teachers have found really helpful. So those would be like, how do you help kids access language in the classroom? And then additionally, all programs had those extra accommodations or
Strategies,
suggestions,
yeah.
strategies for how would you work with students in small group. So,
Well, thank you for answering so comprehensively.
yep.
Are there other, yeah, Maya?
I was curious about the financial aspects of this. I think if I could read correctly, it was like $240,000 for the core ELA program for all classrooms K to 5. And you also mentioned like that we're planning to have this curriculum for 6 years. When we're talking about this kind of money, is this a one-time thing, and what exactly are we getting for that money?
Yep, so the $240,000 that we would use to pay Pearson directly for the MyView materials would be teacher guides and all student materials, including consumables. So in this case, they come with a workbook where they have the text and students are writing and underlining within the textbook. So that would be those consumables for all classrooms for all 6 years.
Oh, okay.
So
Great.
this is an upfront one-shot cost. I hope to not be here in front of you asking for money for a while. And then the high-quality materials, those would also be sets of books, sets of intervention materials that would last for the length of the program. And the PD, I feel like if with that amount of money for PD from the program, that will last us also the length of the
Okay, great.
program. So we had a budget that was $300,000, and we are right within that budget.
Yep.
Just a tad under.
I was gonna say, there's like 50 cents there.
$5,000, which I can use to buy books.
Great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be a good use.
Yeah.
You know, the trade books to go along with the program would be an excellent use of that extra $5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mara, did you have questions?
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of questions. One kind of overall question, and then a couple of budget questions. You had said, and I apologize for having to step out. I just have a little tickle in my throat. In the beginning, that there was a couple of different programs that you had piloted. I'm just curious. I know that I came in on the unicorn slide, so I know that there's no perfect match. But would you say at this point that most of the staff who piloted it, this is the program they want to go with?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
We gave an exit ticket at multiple points, and so I was very careful never to say that it could be a vote, right? Because you can't necessarily vote for a program that you didn't pilot, right? But if we were looking at those as votes,
Right.
then yes, I feel like at the end it felt like it was split, but that yes, a majority of the grade level bands of teachers feel like this is the right program.
Okay, thank you. You also had mentioned some summer PD and that there were some teachers who were thinking of coming in over the summer to help with this. How are we paying them?
In that pocket of $25,000.
I see, okay.
I'm hoping that it will be in there.
Oh, I see, because there's the 240, the 30, and then the 25, so within there, that's how we're paying for that PD, okay.
And we generally, I think the district
Yeah.
generally does
Yeah.
summer study.
In my
Okay.
district PD account, we always have some funds set aside
Okay.
for summer stipends for
Okay.
curriculum development work.
So it would
Okay.
follow the guidelines of those summer.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have a question kind of for the committee, and I don't know if this is necessarily a question for you all, but it's just something to kind of bring up because we're about to vote to approve this, is that correct?
I think that's what Dr. Thompson
That's
is
what you
asking us
would
to
like,
do tonight.
I don't know whether I'm jumping ahead, but can we afford this?
Do we what?
Well,
This is already, but
Yes, I
yeah.
understand that, but can we afford it?
Yes, this is the override money that has been sitting
Okay,
separate, sitting
one thing I
there
just
to
want to
be-
make sure is clear. When
Yeah.
we were talking about this, the overall conversation was, this is money that's going to be put aside for that, as long as we have the funds for that. But there might be one year we don't do the curriculum if that's what we need. I'm just saying, at the last meeting, I asked if we had $20,000 for a teacher, and the answer was, I don't know. I just think it's worth thinking about this. We're about to have a budget discussion where we're talking about being 800,000? Is that right?
Numbers are changing. We'll get into it. but
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's worth thinking about.
Well, but let's remember that this is already in the FY20 budget.
No, I
This isn't-
understand,
Right.
but still.
It's a valid question, and it's one we've been talking about in our budget subcommittee, especially going forward with other curriculum refreshes, asking that type of question. It's
I'm
valid.
more meaning like the overall theory of it, like considering where we're at.
Yes, I mean, this is one of the things that we advocated for with the override. This is in the budget to spend. This is the first time we've spent money on curriculum in 6 years. We should be spending money on curriculum every single year. To not invest and give the teachers the tools is only hurting our kids in the classroom. So.
Just to be clear, I'm not saying I don't think we should invest and get tools.
No, I'm
just
not saying that.
We were just
Right.
said that we don't have 20 grand for a teacher, and this is 295,000. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote for it. I'm just saying we have to think. I think it's something we have to think about.
So is that more of a question? It sounds like your concern is primarily about the conversation that happened last week. Nope, 2 weeks ago, last meeting.
Yeah.
So is that more of a question for Karen about how she was figuring whether or not we had an excess of $20,000 that we could
guess,
use to fund
yeah.
something? And if this was already budgeted?
I mean, I
Does
think
that
my,
make-
I think my
does that
question,
make sense?
I think my question is twofold. It's just a question of, yeah, I guess that would sort of be my first question, and then my second question is more of a, you know, I don't know, I won't be here, so I just think that moving forward, we should think. I know that the idea is to do this every year, but the conversation was had when we decided on this money for the override that if there was a year that we couldn't do it because of other pressures on the budget, it's not as if we signed in blood that we're always going to do this, right? I'm just more meaning for the future, considering what we're looking at for next year. And I guess my question for this year is absolutely to Karen, of like, can we afford this?
Well, he has his curriculum money set aside for
Right.
that.
But I'm just meaning, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I guess
the way, if I may, the way I think about this is that 300,000 was a promise to the town that was made through the override. And so that has been sort of earmarked and set
Right.
aside in our current budget, our FY20 budget, to be spent this year for that purpose, for that explicit purpose. And so the question is, do we have another 20,000 for a teacher? That 20,000 was never on the scope at the time. And so it's like, well, we don't have an extra 20,000, but we've certainly got money for the curriculum program. So, you know, then the idea is that we would swap something else for the curriculum. And that's the question you guys would have to deal with, but.
I guess that's,
yeah.
when I was asked the question before, it was like that 20,000 is over what the amount that is budgeted for. So it was in excess of what you've already got in your budget. I know that there is that, is it the $300,000 that you have earmarked in your,
Right.
the override funds? Because we just moved it over to that area from that big override fund. So I know that money has been set aside for them, so it's kind of like encumbered. We know that that money is set aside for them.
Going
that
forward,
answer-
if the question is, are we going to have 300,000 each year going forward for just for curriculum, that's probably going to be a flexible conversation, you know, because I may not need 300,000 next year for a curriculum refresh. I may need only 250, for instance, and we're, you know, and so that would, in theory, free up some money for other things, you know, if our, you know, if our funding system holds, right?
Just two quick follow-up questions. So all the children who've been involved in the pilot program so far, for the rest of this school year, they stay with their current curriculum. Is that correct? Okay. And then the second question, so we're planning the PD Day April 9th, so you'll need certain material by then, correct?
Right.
Do we have any concerns about getting the material with just munis challenges, et cetera?
So on my end, Pearson has assured us that we're going to be working with kindergarten through second grade and that they will provide any materials that haven't come in yet.
Okay.
My hope would be that we get them sometime in April so that by that May PD Day where we're working with grades 3 to 5,
Okay.
everyone has already had their materials. But I realize it's probably a tighter turnaround on our end than it is on their end. It takes them about 2 to 3 weeks to ship all of the materials, but then of course you have boxes and boxes and boxes showing up to the vault, and then they need to be distributed to all of the students or all of the teachers.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't happen by that first Friday, I believe in April, the teachers will be given what they need.
Okay.
I
But-
can answer a little bit to that.
Yeah.
I do have a new employee who this is Terry Longley. She's my new employee here. And she is an accounting assistant with great skills. She was assistant business manager. She has great experience, great skills. And she is currently helping me with the approval process and trying to get the process quicker. So I'm extremely excited for her to be here. So I think that the process in Munis will start to be quicker. It's certainly been a big help for me because the approving of the invoices in Munis can be extremely timely. It can take you like 2 to 3 hours to approve them in a week. With having Terry here, and she's got great skills with, she's got her 30B certification, so she's really got an eagle eye on them, on the expenditures as well. So I think the process in Munis will begin to be quicker as we go forward. Not only that, people are a little bit more experienced than they were before. So the one other thing that we are doing is we're going to be, as soon as we get a little bit of time, reviewing the approval processes and see if we can kind of streamline them a little bit because they are a little bit on the cumbersome side. So that's another thing that we're going to be looking at going forward. So I do know that with the approving of the invoices has been a great help.
And I'll be in your office tomorrow.
Right.
If we can-
Hopefully, this will be an expedited process for us.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Dave?
So I think this is really timely, well done. As I've spoken before, learning English is the foundation of our society and being an American. So with that, I would recommend a motion to approve purchase of this program.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Yeah, Mark?
I just, it's less about this and more just my final 2 cents on this. Dr. Wyeth said a minute ago that we made a promise to the town to purchase curriculum, which we absolutely did, but I just would like to remind the committee, we also made a promise to the town to stay within the 3.5%.
Yeah.
What's your concern about the pressure on the budget?
I will tell you my concern about the pressure on the budget. I feel like sometimes we get just a little wrapped around the fact that we promise we're going to do this and this and this, and no matter what, we're going to do this and this and this, and that's what we're going to do because it's we promised to do. And I guess I'm just pointing out there's a larger promise that was also made. That's what I'm meaning. I'm not really talking about this one. I'm talking about moving forward. I just feel like sometimes we as a committee just get a little like, but we promise we're going to do this year, and I just don't want it to be moving forward that we're so tied into all of those promises that we kind of miss the forest for the trees, which is to stay within that 3.5%. I can't believe I'm the one advocating for fiscal conservatism. I run my credit card like it's water, but that's just what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can guarantee you we've had these discussions in the budget subcommittee. I mean, I was asking Dr. Thompson many times about the FY21 budget that we're going to be talking about soon, and the curriculum refresh, and do we need the full 300,000? And I had tons of questions along the way with this pilot process that they've all heard. The ones I asked tonight are just the remaining ones that they haven't already answered for me. But I do hear you, and we'll talk about this more in a few moments when we go through the strategic plan. But I think we have tried to take a lot on, and going back to the unicorn analogy again, it's okay, this is just me personally, to make adjustments as we go along the way. I mean, no company, no business, no nonprofit ever creates a strategic plan and then it all happens exactly as you said it is. That's why you have action steps and SMART goals, and you evaluate to make adjustments when needed. So, I don't know if that comforts you in any way.
And I don't know if this helps, but I feel like this is a really good investment in our kids.
I'm sure all of it would be. I mean, and I'm not being I'm really not. But I think all of it is a good investment.
I understand your concerns too.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying as well, because it has been a year of a lot of special education and different things like that. So I do understand you. That my understanding with the 300,000 for this particular meeting, that was supposed to be held for that. But I do hear what you're saying, because sometimes when you get expenditures that are over what you thought they were gonna be, you have to take them from somewhere else.
I guess that's my point. We just had Lori Semino in front of us a couple weeks ago saying that we're, over $1 million over what we thought we were gonna be. That's all I'm saying, is I don't want us to get too but we promised this money was gonna be for this. And I understand that, but I think logically people would understand, we've been hit with $1 million of costs that we didn't anticipate. That was my concern, and I'm just saying, can we still afford, I know that this is what it was intended for, I'm just asking, can we still afford that this year? You feel like we can?
Well, we're using a lot of our circuit breaker, so that's all I can say at this point is that your circuit breaker is gonna be dwindling down.
I also feel like with the ELA, we can't afford not to do it at this point. It's only going to bring stability to what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, and it's going to help, where we feel we need more aides or teachers. It's going to support the work that we do in a stronger way than we're doing it now, so that'll automatically help with some of the issues that require, I think, some of the personnel that the ask is for, potentially.
Yeah, Maya.
I definitely hear what you're saying, Maura, and I am right there with you on the fiscal conservatism, which is not really.
It's just so odd.
How I became the conservative member of the committee, I will never understand, but but I think that one thing I kind of remember clearly is our conversation when we had the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom, and we were in the police and fire, community room there, and we were talking about how supporting special education is a town-wide responsibility. It's not just a school district thing. And what has really impacted our budget most strongly this year is the out-of-district tuitions, and we're having significant increases there. But I would hate to see us fail to invest in 6 grades worth of students because we were concerned about paying for those out-of-district tuitions. And the out-of-district students absolutely deserve those services. They need those services. We are morally and legally required to do that. But, we maybe have to, we've done some things where we've looked at, how aggressive can we be with our circuit breaker account? What can we do? What other places that can we pull from? But I'm really not willing to pull from investments in the curriculum for half of our students.
Yeah. Dr. Thompson?
Yeah, so this is, I talk about investing in the classroom and giving the teachers, the tools that they need. And, our high needs population is at 40% now. It keeps climbing and climbing and climbing, which is more difficult to meet the needs of. So if we're using old tools and methods with a more challenging population, where do we end up? More staff, more out of district. So by not doing what we're trying to do here, we're actually penny wise and pound foolish. We have incredible dedicated professionals in our system. The work that you see here, the number of people that were involved, they deserve these tools. I walked around with the students today. There were several teachers who saw past students and the hugs and where are you and how are you. That passion and caring, you can't teach that. You can't teach that. But if we don't, and we're way behind. We're way behind because we've had to be, previously been in those situations where we have not been providing those tools to the people. And if they had the tools, they're able to do the tier 1 and tier 2, we have more of our kids in the regular classroom with their peers, learning and on track, to meet the competency determinations and have a bright future. And if we don't have the investment in those, we talk every fall about, our scores and improving. If we're not going to, make this a serious commitment to what we're doing, and it might not be $300,000 every year, okay, but there really needs to be a consistent investment in the people who are doing the work and giving them the tools to do the work. Because otherwise, you're looking at other methods to try to fill it in, and even if you have a person, but if they don't have the right tools, that doesn't really solve the problem. So the other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank the committee, thank the work. I advocated as well last year to have, an English language arts coordinator. I think right now we've already seen the benefit of that work here. She got embarrassed. I shared an email she handed to me the other day. It's, "We'll stop doing good work, I'll stop sharing it." But anyways, but it's that kind of investment, and she's thrown into a situation where pilot was already starting and has done a fantastic job with that. And it for a lot of teachers, it's been a process they haven't gone through in a long period of time. So, but you look at the passion, the commitment, the number of people who were involved in this effort. And I love the unicorns. I'm going to use that at home as well. But, and you're right, there is no perfect program, and it really is about getting a good foundation and building all those other pieces in there. And, you heard that commitment, to helping out the kindergarten and first grade, and similar to the math a few years ago. Same sort of thing. But our kids can do it. Our kids can do it if they have, the teachers they have, we give them the right tools and the right PD and the right equipment to do this. Our kids will get there. I believe that.
So Dr. Thompson, you and the ELA committee wanted our approval tonight. There is a motion by Dave, I think might have seconded it. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Good. Before I leave the seat, I would also like to echo what Dr. Thompson had said. I really want to extend my heartfelt thanks to the original committee that started a year or so ago. That was 32 people from all the elementary schools, and that group expanded to about 58, 60 people that were involved directly in the pilot, and they put a tremendous amount of work into it, and I just want to thank them sincerely for their time and effort to date and going forward as they engage this new program with full confidence and full hope for its success. So thank you, Team Norwood.
Thank you. So a reminder, we're just going to adjust our agenda just a little bit so Mr. Bishop does not have to stay here all night with us again. But if you will come join us, please, and share with us the topic that we've discussed before, which is the van drivers and monitors compensation. We asked Mr. Bishop to work on a comprehensive benefit package, and I think it suffices to say he gave that to us in this binder. So thank you for your work.
Thanks. I feel like I came in the wrong night with this, though. But a couple things I'd like to share with you before I get into this. Number one, all of the vehicles, buses, vans, et cetera, they're all equipped with the camera recording devices now. They're all operational. Software's been installed, so that's all done, completed, and completely operational. Second thing is I just wanted to kind of recap where we are with our transport capabilities. This time last year, we were transporting approximately 140 children. As of this morning, we're transporting 180.
Wow.
We have 124 in district, we have 39 out of district, we have 13 McKinney-Ventos, and we only have 4 students that are outsourced to other vendors. We've also...
Excuse me, can you, for the larger audience, explain what McKinney-Vento is?
These are children who have become homeless in the town of Norwood, and as such, the town is responsible for transporting them from wherever they end up back to the Norwood school system. And we're doing that all in-house now. There's none of that farmed out or whatever. We're doing it all. And currently, we have, as of this morning, 13. We had 4 children added this week. We had 2 McKinney-Vento and 2 special education. So we're currently today transporting 180 children versus this same time last year, we were transporting 143. Another thing that has happened, we had 2 more drivers start with us, which I'm pleasant to say is a good thing for us. This is the first time since I've been here that we actually have run out of vehicles. Every single vehicle we have is on the road every day, all day.
Wow.
We reach capacity with the equipment we have. We took delivery of the 2 new handicap vans, wheelchair vans, this past October, and we originally had 3. One of them had a blown engine, but we replaced 2 of them The other two I kept as spares because if we lose one, we're in big trouble. Those two vehicles are actually on the road all the time now. We tend to keep them in a local radius. We're not sending them way out of district. But we're pretty much at capacity unless we were to add more equipment. I don't know how we transport more children. The one thing I have done, though, especially with the assistance of my assistant, Marie Shaughnessy, is we've taken a position where we're not going to farm anything out. We figure a way to do it. You know, we're constantly juggling routes and everything else, and we've been able to keep it all in-house, which is obviously the most economical way to do it. In any event, that was just a little digression before I get into this. The last time that I met with you, we were talking about the increase that the drivers got, which was very well received. But what I did in this presentation is I actually spent the better part of 4 or 5 weeks talking to other directors, receiving copies of contracts, agreements, et cetera, with a number of different communities and towns. Currently, our transportation department employs plus or minus 16 monitors, 21 7D van drivers, and 5 CDL bus drivers. The whole reason for this research and coming up with what I'm presenting you with tonight is primarily to retain employees and to obviously keep the outside transportation vendors to an absolute minimum. We want to keep it all in-house. In the research that I did, it was kind of interesting to find out that there's really 3 different types of groups, if you will, employing the drivers and monitors. One of the private transportation companies like YCN, JSC, First Call. There's a lot of school districts like Norwood that have had no formal employee agreements, contracts, or whatever, and there are a lot of districts that have gone out and done formal agreements and contracts with their employees. The problem statement, which I put in the package here, was that Norwood, like many other local districts, has a transportation department which has grown significantly over the years. When I first started driving here 2.5 years ago, we actually had, I think it was 8 or 9 vans parked with no drivers. When I first became transportation director, my immediate concern was get these things on the road. We were, at the time, spending $30,000-$40,000 a month on outside vendors, and it just seemed like a total ridiculous scenario to have this equipment sitting here that we own, but we're not using it, they're not rolling. So as the department has grown, I think that like many other school systems, school districts locally, I don't think a lot of attention has been paid to the transportation end of things. And as such, a lot of the employee hiring and retention issues really haven't been resolved, monitored, or been well directed. Obviously, it's a great economy right now because the economy, trying to hire people to do this isn't the easiest thing to do. The current wages, which were recently increased, we went up to $15.35 an hour for the monitors, $16.40 an hour for the 7D drivers, and $20.76 for the CDL bus drivers. I know at the time that you folks granted the increase, which, by the way, was extremely well received, that there was concern on your part that maybe it wasn't enough. But again, given the mandates, not mandates, but given the fact that I was as concerned about budget as everybody else, we had this 2.5%, 3.5% thing in our heads the whole time, so we asked for a 2.5% increase. But again, I think to keep the department where it is, or continue to keep everything in-house, I think we have to be a little bit more aggressive from a retention standpoint, which I think you all saw last time. In the document package that I included in the back of my comments, I put copies and excerpts of agreements and contracts with the communities of Walpole, Attleboro, Weymouth, Franklin, Millis, Canton, and a few others. I also had included in the back a lot of the hiring solicitations from the private companies. One thing that stood out right away is not many of the private companies are offering anything in the way of benefits. They may offer a bonus for signing on, an hourly wage, and that's it. But if you look at the communities, the other school districts, they are offering benefits, a lot of benefits that are pretty significant compared to what we currently offer, which is pretty much stagnant. The common items in what all of these groups have been offering is an hourly wage, sick time benefits, paid vacation, paid holidays, and personal time off. Others offer longevity pay, bereavement pay for time off, reimbursements for physicals, as well as license renewals. Some of them offer step increases, some of them offer cost of living increases. Most of them offer access to the healthcare plan of the community for people working over 20 hours. The recommendations that I have for your consideration are to craft a simple but more formal agreement with the employees. I know that after the last meeting, I think I have sent me a copy of a vote the school committee had taken some time ago with regard to, I think it was sick time.
Yes.
Outside of the vote you took that night, I couldn't find it in any documentation I had or in the business office. So I think unless things are a little more formalized, put in a booklet, policies and procedures that, it's kind of hard, even if I weren't here tomorrow, for somebody to come in and step into the position and say, what's what, who's who, what's going on. So I think we should craft some kind of a document that just lays it out. And it doesn't have to be as complicated as a lot of the ones I included in this. I think it can be a very simple 3-4 page document that just lists the ABCDs of what the job is. Job description, job pay, job benefits, etc. With regard to a review of the wages, and again, we just gave them an increase, modest as it was, but in reviewing most of the communities surrounding here, as well as the private companies, I would probably recommend the wage increases that I included in the book to bring them into some parity, not more than what everybody else is making, but at least what everybody else is making. I think if the monitors were bumped up to 16, the 7D drivers to 17 an hour, and the CDL drivers to 21.25, it probably would give them some parity with the surrounding communities. With regard to sick or leave days in the past, and thank you for showing me the vote that you guys took some years ago, but currently the only thing I had was that they were to receive 3 4-hour sick days if they called out sick. I would recommend probably 5 sick days annually with the ability to accumulate up to 15 days. I think that that's reasonable, given the fact that a lot of the time they spend most of the time in a van with sick kids. And we had one driver today that came in this morning, and halfway through his shift, he had to stop. I had to go out and finish his roof for him, but he's really sick. Some of them, again, I recommend, and some of them are a little more generous, some of them aren't as generous, but I would also recommend probably 3 paid personal days per year. Some of them, gee, I need the day off to get my taxes done, or I need to do this, I need to do that. Rather than have them call out sick, I would rather just have them take a personal day for that, so I know their condition, etc. Currently, they have no vacation time at all, and I would certainly recommend looking at 5 paid vacation days per year for the first 5 years, and then beginning in year 6, an additional paid vacation day per year, maxing out at 15 days, which would be 3 weeks. They currently have no holiday pay for any holidays. I'd recommend holiday pay in the amount of their average daily pay for the days that I listed: Labor Day, Columbus Day, etc. I'd recommend also giving them or granting them 3 bereavement days, average daily rate for immediate family. And the last 2 things I would recommend is access to the town health plans for those working over 20 hours a week, and reimbursement for licensure to include physicals. As you know, the census for most of my staff is older, and when it comes to the medical portion of it, most of us are on Medicare, so I don't see that as having any kind of a dramatic impact whatsoever. But in any event, after reviewing and talking to all the other directors in the area, this is what I would recommend as a benefit package for the people that I have. I think that right now, again, being in a position where we have every vehicle occupied, that I could still use another couple of drivers, so I don't have to drive every day. And on top of that, to retain these people who are just doing a great job. I mean, they've helped me. We've hired, since I've been director, I think we've hired 13 drivers. And the fact of the matter is, they've been helping me build this. They understand now that my philosophy is, we're gonna figure a way, hey, you gotta come in, we're adding a couple more kids to your route tomorrow, we're juggling a few things around. And it's being done on a daily basis, and they're great, absolutely great. But in any event, I want to keep it short.
Yeah, Dave.
So just to refresh everybody's memory, on those watching at home, what were we outsourcing spending before your tenure? Because I remember looking at the numbers going, holy, well, this is
Between
unbelievable.
40 and 50,000 a month. And
Yeah.
We're down right now to about 8,000 a month.
So have we
And
done?
I would love to bring that in-house too,
Of
but I
course, of
need
course.
2 more drivers and 2 more vans.
Right. And understandable, the economy is so robust and everybody else is, the minimum wage is up, et cetera. It's also, I think there are things that just being fair and equitable to people that work in our system. But have we done analysis of the increased costs of these recommended benefits?
I haven't. The only thing I keep comparing it to is what outsourcing is going to cost.
Absolutely. I just
Yeah,
wish we
so-
had a, apples to apples kind of comparison.
Right.
I am very confident that when you break it down completely, we'd be saving a lot of money.
Well, the only reason I haven't done that analysis is I was trying to get a feel for where you're going with this. And if, you need more research from me, I can give it, but if you say, we're interested in doing this, this, and this, but not this, this, and this, I'll cost it out. But I just need a little more direction from you folks.
Maya, that vote that the school committee took, I think it was like in 2016. It was a while ago.
I think I was the only
Yeah, it was
member,
before-
it was before you and
Yeah.
Maura joined the committee, and it was
Definitely.
certainly before Dr.
Definitely.
Thompson was here.
Was it 3 vacation days that was voted on at that time?
What the committee planned what we approved was, yes, 3 vacation days a year, and I think there was like a bonus if they didn't take vacation,
Right.
or didn't take sick days.
Sick days.
3 sick or 3 vacation?
I'm sorry, 3 sick days.
3 sick
that's what I
days.
just-
And that
3 sick
somehow
days.
we think got translated into the 3 4-hour shifts, correct?
Right, which was
Again,
never.
that was before me, so I.
Yeah, no, it was before
Right.
most of us.
I
so
mean,
we're-
I was gonna say, I definitely agree with you that there should be something more in writing. I'm leery of calling it an agreement with our employees, because that makes it sound like we are trying to start a collective bargaining unit, which
No,
is
no,
not what
I-
we're trying to do. But I do think that we are, we should have a document that says what the pay and benefits are and what the expectations are, job description, all that kind of stuff. And as a school committee member, it's incredibly frustrating to me that I was part of a committee that sat here and made a decision on this, and the administration at the time failed to really implement what we asked for. And that, so anything that we can do to make sure that the requests of the school committee are actually implemented I'm definitely in favor of.
Yeah, I think maybe we could call them it's a benefit package. That's basically what it is. It's a document that you can hand people when they come in to interview, and this is the benefit package.
The only thing I was gonna say is the health benefits, they should be that way right now. Anybody 20 or over should
Yeah.
be.
That's what I was going to
By
ask.
law.
Yeah.
No, well,
Not by law?
I thought that all
It's a-
municipal, all town
Yeah, it
employees, they're town employees, so
Right. So
aren't they
anybody
covered
working 20
by?
20 hours or over on a consecutive basis. It can't be that you're working 20 hours here and then 10 hours and then 20 hours is eligible for those benefits.
I thought so.
Right.
I agree with you, but again, I'm just going with what I had, and, we're trying to professionalize this a little bit.
Right.
But I don't even think that the school committee is the appropriate one to vote on that. I think that that's a larger town-wide issue. I think there's an agreement that all town employees who
Yeah.
work more than 20
Yeah.
hours a week have
Yeah,
benefits.
that's not-
It
yeah,
should
that's-
just be that if they work
Right.
20 or over, then they go to the town to
Yes.
talk about benefits.
Right.
Again, I can't think of anybody really in our current census that would affect. However,
Right.
my
Maybe
hope
that's
is,
what
my
I
hope
think.
is maybe if we are able to refresh the benefit package, that I might be able to hire a younger census, maybe people that are going to college, looking for a part-time job, driving in the morning or driving in the afternoon after school or whatever. I mean, it'll give us a whole different, hopefully, group to market to.
Right.
And the healthcare for them is probably a little more important than it is to us Medicare folk.
Yeah, Dave.
So my gut is that this is going to benefit all of us in so many ways, especially saving money, which is incredibly important, but I need to know more detail of when we change these benefits, what the bottom line dollar cost will
Sure.
be. So that's, I hate to vote on something blind. Like everything we know from past, it's going to save us money and, you know, really keep great people that are entrusted with the lives of the kids in this town. So that's, you know, you're looking at paying somebody a fairly, not too much above minimum wage to really take great care of the kids. So I really appreciate what they're doing and their passion and what you're doing. So I just need to get more specific numbers on what it is.
Sure, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Joan.
Can you talk a little bit about the reimbursement for the licensures to include physicals? Is it a separate physical?
The CDL drivers have to get one physical a year if they're under the age of 70. If they're over the age of 70, 2 physicals a year. It runs, I want to say, $100, $125 per physical.
Okay.
The 7D drivers also have to get 1 physical a year if they're under the age of 70, or 2 if they're over the age of 70. And again, it runs $100, $125 a year. So you're talking, you know, on the average, probably $100 to $150 per individual. We have some over 70, a lot under 70.
Is that a specialized physical, or is it the same physical that, I mean, it won't
No,
be the same,
it's
but?
basically a basic physical. It's blood pressure, eyesight, hearing, medical history. If you come in and you have a history of diabetes, you have to have a separate diabetes analysis. If you have a history of a heart thing, you have to have a cardiologist sign off. But, you know, they have to do it.
It's separate from like your insurance physical, though? That's my
Absolutely.
question. Okay,
Typically, they'll go to a
that's
place
better way
like
to frame it.
Urgent Care or somebody like that that specializes in CDL slash
Okay.
7D physicals. And, you know, it takes about a half hour.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and forgive my ignorance, but there's a drug test too, I'm assuming?
We have a, that's separate from all of this, but we have a pre-employment drug testing program and a alcohol and drug testing program that is random in nature. And we belong to a consortium, and the consortium will send us a notice, you know, once a month or once every 2 months that this person is to go for a drug test or an alcohol test. They don't do pre-employment alcohol, obviously, but
Right.
they do pre-employment drug.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, Maya.
I definitely agree with Dave that we would need some information about like what we're looking at in the way
Sure,
of financial
sure.
implications. I mean, if I just kind of do the back of the envelope calculation, you're talking about, you know, adding, like, right now they get 3 sick days, or hopefully they, you know, something close to 3 sick days, but we're talking about, you know, like 23 days by the time you add in the holiday vacation and all that kind of stuff, and many of them are only working about 180 days a year, so you're looking at a more than 10% increase just for that without doing a wage increase. And so we would really need to look at our year-to-date numbers and information about where, you know, what this would actually cost
Yeah,
us.
about-
And you know,
Sure.
I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. I don't want to, you know, try
I
to.
couldn't agree with you more, but until I had a kind of feedback or a flavor of how you folks felt, I didn't know.
No, I understand, but, you know, I do think it may make sense to invest in some additional benefits, because that will help us keep a program going so that we're not doing the
Yeah, absolutely.
outside contracting, which is much more expensive, but we still need to know what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And where it's going to come from.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask, is this something that we want to start immediately, or for the next fiscal year? Or is it that you want a cost analysis for the remainder of this year, and then what the cost analysis for next year as well?
I would say both. We need to know what we're approving and how that will be paid for in the future.
Okay, so this year as well. Right.
In terms of timeline, the next meeting on March 11th, you would come back, or you
Sure.
need more time?
No, that's enough time for me.
Okay.
Just one quick,
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Bishop had asked us he basically said he needs some direction.
Mhm.
Do you feel like do we want him to investigate everything on this list? Is that the will of the committee, or are there things that we can kind of say, I'm not sure about this? It seems like that's what he was asking for, so I'm just making sure we're giving him what he asked for.
Yeah. Do you have direction, or with Mr. Catania and
I
Ms.
think I have the
Bonhoeffer
direction, and when I came up with this list, I did communicate with a lot of the drivers, number one. Number two, I did look at the surrounding towns, I did talk to the other directors, and I think that, if anything, what I'm presenting you with is conservative, but I think it's appropriate. And I think our drivers would be happy with it. So, I didn't want to come in here and look for next 20 years of step increases and, COLs and everything else. I think that this is reasonable. I think it's going to have to be revisited from time to time, but I think the labor market can dictate when it has to be revisited.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Bishop? Well, thank you for your time.
I'll bring you numbers.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you
Nice job.
soon. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So returning on our agenda to superintendent's report, Dr. Thompson, I believe we're going to start with the strategic plan update.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Let me just wake the computer up here. So just to review for those at home, if you are going to the school website and you go under district, oops, don't click too hard, but district, along down on district is strategic plan right there. When you get to the strategic plan, you can go to the strategic plan dashboard. All right, which is our dashboard and gives the progress under all of the initiatives that are there. So if you look at that overall, you can see that we've got, a couple yellows. This one, I believe, is yellow simply because of the time piece, but it looks like it's 100%. But you click in here, and you can see all of the pieces there. So there's one here that's critical. These early evidence of changes don't actually roll up into the thing. I don't know why we could be 100% and be off target unless it's a time thing. But that's a quick and easy way to see a progress update on where we are with the strategic plan. And again, as we mentioned earlier, if you have all greens, it probably wasn't ambitious enough. If you have all reds, it was probably too ambitious. We're somewhere in the Goldilocks version of somewhere in between. But also along with this, I will be posting an update of the written report. And if you actually skip over to the first 2 pages, is kind of a general overview. But if you skip to page 4, you can see kind of an item by item piece there. The first one was, is the budget transparency progress, and we did start a lot of good conversations about that early in the process. And then the actual getting the budget done, I think, has taken a little bit of the front seat of the bus, if you will, which is why some of our interviews with other districts and things along that line, looking at survey results, have not happened yet, but they have been started. And we will be, I think, coming back to that once we get our final budget draft there. So that's the first one. You can see that there is, again, a red under 1.1.5, which is gathering current process and recommendations for change. And again, it's just something that has just kind of appeared, not been in the forefront because of where we are in the budget process. Looking on to 1.3, aligning town and school resources. Under that, we have mostly green. 3 out of 4 are green. There is 1 red, which is the budget tracking and accounts payable. And we still are kind of running into some boo-boos with Munis. Sometimes it seems to work, and sometimes it raises some challenges. So we're a little behind on that, the budget tracking piece. And that, again, is aligning accounts and things, and that is an ongoing process. Looking at 1.6, Norwood contracts. The contracts, all of the contracts that we are negotiating and the individual contracts have been reviewed and suggestions have been made. The one thing we have, we're still in the process of doing, and again, that budget process is looking at comparable towns and salary and benefit information from there. And we still have work to do. Yeah, that's the work we have to do. One is a process benchmark and one is the actual action item, but that's kind of the same piece there. The good news is when we move on to facilities and operations, those are all green. I'll get more into this. There's one actually that should be marked as 100% done, or actually 2 of them. These are process benchmarks, which don't always show up when people are trying to fill in on the through the app. But the feasibility study agreement, we have that completed at this point, and we have affirmed our interest in joining the feasibility phase as of last Thursday. But I'll come back to that. On 2.3.4. The technology plan, that is in process. I need to get Mr. Kidd to change that, but he has had several meetings around that, and that will be on schedule to finish by June. So the updated plan and the strategic plan and tying it will be all done by then. 2.4, the improved safety measures and procedures. We still have our safety task force team that has rewritten the book. That is still in the process of being reviewed with our public safety folks, and you can see that we've made good progress in all of those. I think we might be a little behind on sharing that with the committee, but I expect that probably will happen the next month or so.
It's on our long-term agenda. I just don't
Right.
remember which one.
Yeah, I think we pushed it off to
It's
maybe
I think April.
March
Like,
or April.
Yeah, so we could get through the budget, but
Right.
it is on our agenda.
But it is happening, it is in progress, and we are on track. Again, the red type on these is not a bad thing. Those are key benchmarks that we are working on. And 3.1 is around standardized instructional practice. You can see that, so for 3.1, key elements of standardized instructional practice, a lot of work has happened with that this year. I can tell you personally from my visits to schools, we are seeing a lot of these strategies in the classroom as we were walking around. There is, part of the evaluation process with the principals has been around either observing in classrooms and looking for those standards of practice, as well as me participating or watching and observing their staff meetings and other PD opportunities that are revolved around those, and those are up to date. But we're making good progress in that area. Providing planning and professional learning time, we've discussed several times that we are ahead of schedule. We jumped that benchmark up a year because we had the opportunity to make that change last year. We are still in the process of revising that. There was some discussion earlier this week with the elementary principals about tweaking the specialist schedule to try to maximize some of the time that people have together and to make spread out that common planning time a little bit more to make it a little more accessible. But you can see that we are on target in those areas as well. Implement a professional learning system by using professional learning time for instructional improvement. That includes high professional development, PLCs, tiered support, data teams, project-based learning. So, the common planning time has been instrumental in that aspect. The ability for them to come together. You heard just a moment ago with the ELA curriculum, how they use that common playing time to really look at the results and look at the growth that they've seen. You also saw, if you look back on those slides, that they're using Renaissance to show growth and to use that as a basis and measurement of how students are doing with different programs. The PD plan for next year is, I believe it has started, Dr. Wyeth, for next year. We do also have a draft of our curriculum refresh cycle. I think we're still trying to make a final decision whether we go science or go social studies next year, and there's pros to cons to both. 3.3.2, which is the instructional rounds. If you remember from our last update or the update before, one of those observations that I partook in was the high school PD staff meeting where they were working on instructional rounds. We do have one school. We are going to be looking for a second school to pick up that and do that later on this year. Some minor things like the Google Sheet to organize the data. Also under that, there was a great collection of information that Dr. Wyeth started about 2 weeks ago on how and when professional learning time and looking at data and measurements are being done, and that has taken a tick up as well. 3.4, identify core instructional programming at each outcome level. A lot of this was our ELA work. I do have to ask Mrs. Ferrara if she would update for 3.4.1.5, which is adopt, purchase an elementary ELA curriculum. I think we can mark that achieved at this point. Thank you, Dr. Wyeth. I wanted to make sure that we were on track on that one. And I mentioned the curriculum review, which is 3.4.8. That I believe actually is higher than 25%, Dr. Wyeth, from what I saw a couple weeks ago. But we have to crack that whip about updating that in the plan. But and then 3.5, leveraging technology. And again, the Chromebook program has been extremely successful. The amount of use that we are seeing in our classrooms and the way it has enhanced what's going on there has been fantastic. There's more technology available now at the elementary schools. We look to continue growing that as we move through. The Fuse Fellowship version 2 is well on its way and has been very productive, along with our early adopters at the Balch. And which school are we doing early adopters at in the second round?
It's the Cleveland.
Cleveland,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, but we are well on track for that. It's roughly halfway through the year, and the PD is halfway done, which kind of makes sense. That's 3.5.6. There's several that we have. Yeah, I had a conversation with On Strategy about how they do their measuring and how we did it in our planning and bringing them together. But process benchmarks don't roll up because we just use them as indicators, not as with the planning for success model where they do. So we had to change that. So where it says not started doesn't mean it wasn't started. It just means they're not tracking it. 3.6, analyze and synthesize data to inform instruction. Obviously, a huge step in this direction was the Renaissance program. So we have, put in the online assessment system for screening and benchmarking students. Purchased the program, all of those things. We have completed the training, I believe now, Dr. Wyeth, for our champions, our Renaissance champions. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doing some ongoing coaching.
Right, so, and they are starting coaching over the next few months. We are still working on 3.6.8, we're a little bit off target on that, and that's the reporting piece. Part of that is just basically when we finish that champion program and giving people the chance to actually dig into the program. And there was some problem with some of the reports working early in January, so that set us back a little bit. So 3.7 is one that I will be asking the committee to change a finish date on that. Obviously, Mrs. Smino is new to the district. I had anticipated, her being able to work on that this year, but with the Department of Ed review that is happening this spring, that has kind of gotten pushed back. So that has not started. I'd like to push that date back to next, to December for her to finish that analysis. But that kind of explains why those are, other things have jumped to the head of the line, if you will, in special ed. So if the committee would consider that change, I would appreciate it. Programs and pathways, and I think I've reported out to you that our first year, actually, I sat with 2 kids at lunch for our student government day who are in the healthcare pathway. They were telling me how great it is, so that was awesome. A second pathway has been proposed to the department, so we are definitely on track in 4.1. In aligning programs, 4.2, we're making good progress with that. And again, once we had the pathways, then it's aligning the other curriculum around it, but we have made good progress in that area at the high school as well. Community partnerships, 4.4. And again, red means not bad. Red means that it's a primary indicator. And again, we are on target there, and that's developing those partnerships. Again, the healthcare partnership started with Norwood Hospital, has expanded to Harvard, and has expanded to Moderna as well. The other pathway we're looking at is a media communications pathway, broadcasting. So NCM is kind of our first partner, but we're looking to expand that at this point in time. So that program has been really making a lot of great progress. 5.1, systematic approach to building student and teacher capacity for social and emotional learning. This is an area that we are making some progress in, but it's again, lots of plates we're trying. Actually, Mr. Riley said it pretty well yesterday as we were having a meeting. We have lots of planes in the air and only one runway, so it's kind of difficult to get them all down. But this is, we've made some good progress here. I think there's definitely some work we need to do this spring, especially around selecting other programs. The problem we're running into is that we have elementary programs for SEL, but a lot of the high school and middle school programs are still being developed. So we have a couple that we like, one being Choose to Be Nice, but they're still working on a high school program. They don't have it fully developed yet. So we're running into some tripping points that are kind of beyond our control. Increasing district capacity for culturally responsive practices. We do have some good work in this. We've had some difficulty really making it K through 12 because of all the other initiatives going on, especially at the elementary level. We do have at the high school World Difference, actually this evening, the multicultural interaction that was being held at the preschool. There's a lot happening at the preschool about bringing in other cultures and people sharing about their cultures. We definitely have some work to do at the elementary level, and I'm not quite sure that might be one of those ones that maybe was a little too ambitious in this first year. Engaging parents through culturally competent communication. The main focus here was really getting documents that were translated into multiple languages, and that has been completed for the most part, or is on track. There's still a little bit of work to do in that area. And I've already mentioned the crisis and safety team in 5.4. And we're a little far behind on the team members coming together, and part of that is other commitments from the police and fire, but we're not doing too badly in that one. That's definitely an area where hopefully this spring we will kick up a notch. So I don't know if the committee has any particular questions, and if they would consider that change for the inclusion benchmark, I would greatly appreciate that.
So the request to approve the change in 3.7, but are you also requesting any change with 5.2 at this time? The piece around the cultural competency?
I think I want to go back. I'm not quite sure because it's not just a date change.
Okay.
We're running into the capacity because there's so many things that are going on at the elementary level. You know, it's a capacity problem, not a date problem. So I haven't quite figured out how we, address that one. I think it's, again, might have been just too big of a bite.
Yeah, like you've
Yeah.
heard me say it before, but I feel like obviously there's a lot of progress and really great things
Right.
happening. But this to me is like one example of where it's year 2. Like maybe we shift it to year 2 rather than even trying to adjust for
Right.
year
Yeah.
1. Just like 3.7 is more now rolling over into
Right.
year 2.
Right, right. And the other piece is, with our PD, because part of the inclusion piece was looking at, what's working, what kind of PD do we need to do, what kind of resources do we need. But next year, because of the calendar, because of the ELA program, we had basically our 3 PD days before the middle of November.
Right.
And that's got to be the focus to make sure that program gets a good firm start. So how do you do that plus the PD for this plus the PD for that? So it's running into lots of planes to fly and only one runway. So it's one of those situations. Not a lack of ability or passion, but.
Can I ask you about 5.1 and Dr. Wyeth, maybe you can answer too, like the SEL task force, because it does say 5.1.5, we're supposed to be procuring funding, but are we there for
We are for
FY21?
the elementary level.
Right.
We've procured, we've done PD and purchased new binders for K through 5.
Okay, with the open
So that's kind
circle?
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, for open
Circle.
circle.
Right. The tripping point is an actual program materials for middle school and high school.
Right.
Because the programs that we've looked into that we like are not finished yet.
But is this
So-
something coming our way in FY21 for the SEL funding, or?
Yeah, we should check with the principals on that. I think that may be part of some of our curriculum material adoption.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there other questions for Dr. Thompson or feedback? Yeah, Maya.
So, I'm curious about your recommendations for adjustment are only about those 2 timeline things, the 3.7 and the 5.2?
Yeah.
Okay. We have not yet developed plans for the year 2 and 3 plan. The idea is that there'll be a 2-year plan that will cover years 2 and 3.
Right.
What's the general thought on a timeline for when those conversations will start?
I'm hoping to start those conversations right after the April break. So once we're close to the end, doing that, and I mentioned the early indicators piece. The way On Strategy would have coached us to do the strategic plan is that those would be indicators that would roll up into, and we just did it as points we're looking for, not necessarily time dependent. So we need to figure out, I need to spend a little more time with them with how that would work. We also need to look at what other ways would we be measuring these besides how much did we do? What are some hard numbers that we can put into this as far as measuring progress as well? And again, this is a fantastic tool, and it actually makes tracking it and having multiple people working in different silos, if you will. But we didn't write the plan to work with the tool. So there's been a little bit of adjustment.
I do think that this is a great tool, and I think it's great that we get this whole report and we can see everything. I would say that when we do the next update, what I'd really love to see is just a focus on any recommendations for adjustments to the timeline, highlighting any areas where you think we're struggling and, you know, there's maybe need for more support, and then kind of a deeper dive into just 2 or 3 main things that we want the community to be aware of, because we have all the detail. We can go in and read the whole thing. I think it's easy to get a little lost in, you know, section 5.2.3.7.2 or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I think that's what I would really love to see at our meetings.
Okay. The other thing is that this will be posted and updated on the website, so everybody who wants to read the whole report, that will be up there as well. Yep.
Great.
Can I add to my structure, recently accomplished things as well? So like the high, like not just a deep dive into a couple of things, because I think if you plan that, we should hit everything over the course of a couple of meetings, but I'd also love to see, like, we recently just finished this part of it. Yay for us.
Right. Yep.
And you and I just need to sit down and talk about the timeline moving forward, because we got pushed back almost a month with this one, so.
Right.
Like, we're supposed to have another one in 2 weeks. I don't think that's gonna happen, so we just need to adjust our long-term agenda.
Okay.
But we can do that.
Highlight it.
Okay. So moving along to your next update on the MSBA process?
Yes, MSBA. So last Thursday, we were in Boston for the Massachusetts School Building Authority board meeting. At that board meeting, we were voted into the feasibility phase of the school building process. We had eligibility. Now we're into feasibility. Feasibility is going to take about 1.5 years to finish. The main purpose of that is to look at, you know, what kind of school, is it a 5 to 8, 6 to 8, building a rationale for how big it needs to be, where it would be, what it might look like, you know, cost estimates. The next step is to hire an owner's project manager to manage that piece and to hire other contractors to do that professional work. That is already in process. Kathy Carney, who is the town purchasing agent, and I was really glad that she accompanied us, because she sat in that meeting and she was nodding her head and she knew everything, all the letters and funny words that they were saying. So I was very happy that she was there, I was very happy that Alan Slater, the chair of our building committee, was there, because he was nodding and understood a lot of those funny words as well. So, but very excited about that. I mean, a lot of hard work by a lot of people. It really is a joint effort from all across the town to keep this project on the forefront and keep it working. The other thing is that the building committee has visited 2 middle schools, 5 through 8 middle schools since after the December break, and just to get a view as to what they possibly could be like. I think they like Rainier Middle School the best, but that's just might be my personal bias. But this is a great day for Norwood to be considered in this. This will save the town a significant amount of money with that. I think the building committee is getting a little idea of what this building could be. And honestly, if you know, I have my brothers and druthers, it's going to be a game changer for our kids. So I appreciate everybody in the building committee and their efforts in doing this, and pretty excited to be in this position. So onward and upward.
Great. Do you have any other late agenda items?
Sure, yes. So real quick, the Student Opportunities Act plan, or SOAP as we like to call it around here. And just to recap, we've talked about this, but out of Norwood is one of 7 or 8 communities in the Commonwealth that have over $1.5 million increase in Chapter 70. Why is that? Because Norwood has a significant amount of needy population We've had a significant increase in ELL. Our special ed numbers are 20.7 last time we counted percent. So we have a significant high needs population. Other towns that are in that category that have to do the long form are Lawrence, Fall River, and other gateway cities. And not that we're in the same category, but we're experiencing the same kind of change that they are. So part of that 1.58 million that we are receiving as an increase in Chapter 70 aid, we have to spend a certain amount of it to put together a plan to close achievement gaps with the population. So the administrative team and I have been sitting and talking about who is our target population. At this point, we are looking at targeting special education, good population to try to fit the needs of, looking at early literacy in elementary, looking at co-teaching at the middle school, and probably mental health at the high school. So we have a direction, we have a what kind of programs we might do. We're currently in the process of researching exactly what that will look like, exactly what the cost will be. But we need to bring a plan to you by the end of March because the school committee needs to vote on it, and it has to be into the DESE by 11/59/59 on the 1st of April. So that is a process. It's a very short window. It's a little frustrating because you're also trying to work on a budget and a few other things, and all of a sudden you're trying to do this. But our priority is to make sure we're meeting the needs, meeting the requirements of the law, that it is going to fit into our strategic plan, so it's not another thing. But and making sure, because we also have to measure and be able to track progress and prove that to the department as well. So you can't just throw money at this, that, and everything. You have to do it in a conscientious, strategic way that's smart and measurable. So we are working through that. We are going to meet again tomorrow. Hopefully next week we'll have that kind of narrowed down. We're going to start looking at programs and costs. Their homework from Tuesday was to come up with what kind of metrics and measures we're going to use. And some can be from the state, and some can be our own. And whether the measures that we have, for instance, Renaissance, will fit the criteria, or do we need to get a early reading measurement? Is there something in foundations that will count, or do we need to invest more in DRA, or perhaps bring Dibbles in or something along that line? So there's a little bit more to this than just, here's $600 to spend. So we have to have a target, have a method, have a measurement, and report it out. So, never boring. So, the other thing is that, we have gotten a few questions about the coronavirus. There was unfortunately an article in the New York Times that suggested that parents contact the schools. We did send a letter out at the beginning of February to families. There was a new update. Boston, in this area, I think we only have one confirmed case at this point. We are not a high-risk area. That has not changed. But I also want to, and we're going to have a letter and do a posting tomorrow for families so they'll be able to read this for themselves. But when the H1N1, the swine flu, came out, there was a whole criteria that went out about cleaning buildings and procedures and such. We still use those procedures. Those are still the same procedures you would use for the flu. And since then, we have purchased portable disinfectant sprayers that are used regularly in our building. If we are seeing an increase in any sort of flu or virus, that cleaning takes a step up. So there's a level of cleaning that is pretty high, and then that goes up as well. So that will be coming hopefully tomorrow, if not tomorrow, by Friday. There'll be a Blackboard announcement. We'll send it home. It'll also be posted on the website. But I just want the community to know, and the committee to know, that we are on top of it. Our lead nurse and Paul Riccardi are already ahead of the information that is coming out. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, Student Government Day today, we had the superintendent and 4 school committee members spend the morning and lunch with me. It really is a great day. We did talk about some topics that they could either do a mock student school committee meeting or part of, but we should probably talk at some point in time in the near future about when we would want to do that with them. But it is a great event. I want to thank Mr. Mizuko and Jen Orlinsky for bringing that all together. But it's a great opportunity. There was probably 75 or 80 students from the high school involved with every aspect. There was a kid with the animal control officer. There was a kid who was in charge of the airport. Everything soup to nuts. It was just what we did was we came here. We toured the Savage. We went to see all the different departments and spoke to the people there, so they got an idea. Because generally, the idea of a school department is teacher classroom, but that support piece of that. And then we went and we spent some time in schools, visiting classrooms and seeing instruction. And it was a great morning. We had a wonderful lunch as well. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson.
Can I make a motion for
Yeah.
a 5-minute recess?
Seconded.
I was just about to ask.
Sorry.
So no, you guys are good. So all in favor of a 5-minute recess?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Welcome back to the school committee meeting. Continuing on with our agenda is budget. So Ms. Sheridan, you are going to be giving us an update on the grants report and the revolving funds.
So what I'm doing with grants and revolving is a lot of investigation, a lot of analysis. I've been sorting through the paperwork, the budget worksheets for the grants, looking at all the supporting documents for the grants, and also looking at the Munis records. Tonight, what I have for you is the grant awards that we've gotten in FY20 with the categories for each award, and also the grant employee positions that are in each award. At a later date, I'm going to be giving you an update on how much has been expended in each grant. It's just, at this point right now, I feel like I need more investigation to give a more accurate report on that. There's been some glitches in the Munis with the payroll being put into the Munis in the beginning of the year, and I feel like I really need to look into make sure that the payroll for the grants and revolving is going to the proper place. So if that will be at a later date, as soon as I get that. With the grant award sheet that I gave you, if you want to pull that out, I highlighted the ones that are special education grants. So you have 3 special education grants. You have the IDEA grant, the Early Childhood Special Education grant, and the Inclusive Preschool grant. With regard to the remainder of the grants, you have the Federal Title I, Title IIA, Title III, Title IV. You have a CFCE, Coordinated Family and Community Engagement grant. You have the Comprehensive School Health Services grant. You have an I Am Strong Foundation grant, Project Lead the Way grant, Innovative Pathways, Significant Disproportionality and Special Education Targeted Program grant, Safe and Supportive School grant, Innovative Classroom grant, a Safer Schools and Communities grant. That total FY20 award with all these grants is $1,834,752. Some of the grant employee positions in these grants, Title I has 5.1 full-time equivalencies of employees. It's got 4.5 teachers there. It's got a 0.60 of an administrative assistant. The Title IIA has a 0.5 of a teacher. The Title III has 2.1 ELL paraprofessionals. The Title IV, it does not have any personnel in there. Well, it has a little bit of personnel, but not a full-time equivalency. It's mostly for social, emotional learning, school safety, and wellness. So I think it has like some stipends and stuff like that in there. The IDEA grant, the 240 grant, is the largest 240 largest special education grant that you have. You have 19.6 full-time equivalencies of staff in that grant. You have mostly paraprofessionals in that grant. You have 2 facilitators and 1 PT. The Early Childhood Special Education Grant has a .56 of a sped paraprofessional. Your CFCE has a .5 of, that's just a coordinator, some coordinators in there. And then your Inclusive Preschool Grant, which is the one that we're losing this year, this is the last year for that, has 1.18 of a sped paraprofessional. The final one that has grant employees in it is the Comprehensive School Health Services Grant, where you have a .60 of a nurse, a .40 of an adjustment counselor, and a .50 of a sped paraprofessional. Some of the things that these grants are helping with the school is, let's see, we've got the CFCE, Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Grant. It's got some Nurturing Fathers group. It's got some parent ed programs. The I Am Strong Foundation grant is doing some inclusive mindfulness room. The Innovative Pathways grant is doing the Innovative Pathways program. The Safe and Supportive School grant, Al just informed me that they did do an amendment to that one, and that is doing K-5 open circle training. And then the Safer Schools is where you did some school security with some new cameras and some new door locks. The final one, the Innovative Classroom grant, is doing the maker space equipment and some supplies. So that's the bulk of your grants right now. And like I said, I will give you an update at a later time on how much has been expended to date. All right. You do have a little bit of the FY19 grants remaining. I have, right now we're doing an analysis on that to see what you have left on that to spend. I know there's a little bit of money in the FY19 grant that was to be paid for some of the summer school for the teachers. So we're working on getting that get that information together. Some of the things that I've been working on the last couple of weeks with that is improving the internal controls and the checks and balances with the grants. I have a couple of the clerks setting up binders to make sure that everything to do with the grant is in the binder for the audit. I have them, I had developed some spreadsheets for them so that they can start to get analysis for what has been spent in the grant, and also maybe some projections on what the expenditures for the future are for the grants, so that we'll have a better grasp on how the grants are going to be spent through the year. I'm finding from the analysis that I've been doing right now that there are still some grants that still have a lot of expenditures that still need to expend some of their monies. So that's why I want to try to get a better grasp on it with better internal controls and the checks and balances in place. What we're going to be doing is Terry, who's a new accounting assistant, is going to be the one that's going to be making sure that everything that is being expended, including the payroll with regard to the grants and revolving, is double checked to make sure that's what's going into the Munis system. Right now there's not a strong internal control on that, so that's one thing that we're putting into place, that one person is going to be the one that's going to be inputting the information, making sure they check with Terry on if it's the proper account for that, and then Terry will be checking on Munis to make sure that the reports that have come off of Munis are matching with the spreadsheets that they're developing. So I think that will help with the checks and balances, and help us to make sure that the Munis system has been set up properly, and that the expenditures and payroll that are in there right now are what actually happened. So that's what's going on with the grant situation. With regard to the revolving funds, I did a lot of investigation on those as well. I gave you a spreadsheet on the revolving accounts, the beginning balances, the revenue, the payroll, the tuition, the year-to-date expenditures, the encumbrances, and the balances. On circuit breaker, you've got the custodial overtime, athletic revolving, summer school, school insurance recovery, the books and materials, school bus fees, school athletic user fees, Chromebook insurance, and building rental. Those are the revolving funds that I have analyzed thus far, all right? So just to give you a little synopsis on those revolving funds. The custodial overtime is exactly what it says. It's what's used for the overtime to pay for the custodians. If you have, for example, if a custodian is working for, they have somebody has rented the space and you need to have a custodian working there. So they may have to pay for the custodian's time. That would go into that revolving fund, and then the overtime would have to pay for that. So it's kind of an area just to use just for the overtime of the custodians. The athletic revolving, right now what I'm seeing being paid out of that is the police detail and line painting of the field hockey. On the summer school, this one appears to be in a negative balance right now in Munis, but as I indicated to you, there is some FY19 monies left over that is supposed to be journal entry to cover that. That was something that I just discovered a memo that was supposed to be happening, and that journal entry was not done yet, so that will be done. The insurance recovery revolving fund, that's where if you have, for example, there was an accident in the van, any money that you get from your insurance company is put into that revolving fund, and thus any of the repairs for that particular incident should be the expenditures should put into that revolving as well to wash out that revolving. It should at the end of the year be zero. So right now in that I see just the one accident for the van. The school books and materials, that's just a lost books. If somebody loses a book and they have to pay for the book, then that revenue will go into that account. The school bus fees, the school bus fees right now is the revolving account that seems to have the most money in it. Right now it has $322,343 as the balance. The expenditures coming out of that right now is they paid for some bus pass supplies. Their copy machine lease is being paid out of that at $104.27 per month. They've been doing a lot of the inspection of the vans out of that account. We've also encumbered the money for the cameras to come out of that, and the cameras were just installed into the van, so that should be coming an actual expense very shortly. Let's see. There's also going to be some of the increase in the wages for the van drivers and the monitors that will be coming out of there. The athletic user fee, what do you see coming out of there right now? They're paying for some officials out of there. They have some various athletic supplies and expenses, and the cell phone for the athletic director is coming out of that account. The Chromebook insurance, that's the fees that the students pay for their insurance for their Chromebooks. Right now they're paying for Chromebooks and parts out of that. They paid for the hotspot renewal. They paid for the Chrome Gopher renewal, and they paid for Visions for Chromebook software. The building rental revolving account, there's various tenants that pay monthly rent, and that rent goes into the revolving account. Thus, that money can be used for the building, for any type of maintenance to the building, or some type of, any expenditures for that particular building. Right now, some of the tenants that you have Enable Early Intervention, you have WIC, you have Extended Day, you have Self-Help. So those are some of the tenants that are paying the monthly rent right now. Those 4 tenants, for the year, the estimated rent that they pay is $189,706. Some of the other rent that you get that is put into that building rental account is, for example, if Norwood Basketball, Norwood Youth Soccer, they would pay $36 an hour to use any of your facilities, your middle school, your high school, the Savage Center. You've also got the students pay a fee for parking space at the high school. That fee is $100 per year unless it's after January 1st, and then it becomes $50 a year. I did look at your building rental there is a booklet on your building rental and your, the rental fee schedule. But my opinion is that maybe during the summer, it's something that we should review, because it doesn't look like it has been updated in a while. So I think that's something that may be a summer project, to start reviewing that facility's rental schedule, and see if that should be updated in line with, you know, what the surrounding towns are charging for the fees. So there, I do have some more accounts to be analyzed right now. That would be extended day, preschool, some of the student activities, a couple more of the revolving, and then the donations. Again, it's just a lot of analysis and investigation to get you some accurate reports, and I don't want to bring reports to the table that are not accurate. So it's going to be a continuation of really investigating and make sure that everything's going into the proper account. The final one that I have is the circuit breaker update. The circuit breaker update, I gave you analysis here, this sheet on the circuit breaker. And to date right now, we started the year with $1,604,093. To date, we've gotten in $1,041,974 from our circuit breaker reimbursement from the state. We've applied $1,517,608 of tuition against the circuit breaker, which leaves an ending balance at this time of $1,128,459. We still have some revenue expected for the remainder of the year. And when I look at your estimate in the Munis report with your year-to-date expenditures and your encumbrances that we have in there as of year-to-date, it looks like you have an adjusted balance, an estimated balance at the end of the year right now at $885,355. So that's what my estimate as of this time is. That's as long as we don't get any more special education students, and then I'd have to give you a new update. But that's with all the encumbrances and year-to-date expenditures to date. So, some of the, I can go over the revolving fund offsets when we go through the FY21 budget.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Did you have a
Sorry,
question, Jen? That's okay.
I do have a question. I have a bunch of questions. I'll hold them until the end, but I'm going to ask this one because it's quasi-related. Two. JHN revolving. Can you just, what does JHN stand for?
We talked about that today at the budget
Sorry.
subcommittee meeting. I believe it's the Savage Centers.
I think it's junior high north.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Like you said, it's been a real investigation and a puzzle putting together all these revolving agreements.
I don't know if you can answer this for me, but can somebody please explain to me, again, I will ask again, the relationship of the extended day program to Norwood Public Schools? Because they are listed in the same category under the revolving accounts as things like preschool and student activities, but then they're also listed as a tenant. And correct me if I'm wrong, but our director reports to you. Can somebody explain to me the relationship?
It is a separate program that is associated with the Norwood Public Schools. So it's a self-funding.
Has to be self-funded.
It's a self-funding organization that's associated with the Norwood Public Schools.
Are we responsible for what happens to
They
those
come under our
students?
insurance, yeah.
Yes.
So why are they paying us rent? I
Because
mean, not that
they're-
I'm gonna say don't pay us rent, like,
Because
great, but
they are a separate organization, and that's part of their operating expense. I mean, I didn't create it, so I don't know if somebody wants to jump in.
I'll let my opinion.
Can I jump in? It's kind of in some ways similar to food services. Like
that's a good analogy.
You
Thank
know,
you.
Oh,
that's it. There are people who, you know, work for food services who are Norwood Public Schools employees, but they report up through food services. They're paid out of the revolving fund for the food services. And for food services, the schools actually, like, we charge food services some money for utilities because they are using our electricity
Yep.
to cook that food. So in the same way, like the extended day program, they are getting, like, we're acknowledging in this way that, like, they're getting the benefit of the space.
Okay.
And so it's, I don't know how much, I don't know that they actually cut us checks for the rent, or if it just kind of is a paper exercise that sort of goes back and forth, you know, but they do get charged for the fact that they're using that space.
Okay.
What
so
I can tell you, with regard to the extended day, the extended day revenue can only be used for extended day. So it's not like
it's a
you
revolving
can.
account.
Right, so when they get any revenue in for their extended day, it's not, you cannot use it for anything other than the extended day, with the exception of, like, if they're using space in the building, you can charge them rent. If they're using a portion of a custodian, you could do it as long as you have reasonableness of what's the square footage of the space they're using, and how much is, how many of the custodians are in there doing it. So you have to have a reasonableness on the expenditures of the, like, facilities and rent and stuff like that. So they charge rent on their square footage. But any revenue that comes in has to be paid for that program, with regard to what is keeping that program afloat, which, for example, it could be the administrative fees.
Right. Okay, so this is starting to make more sense. So can we use that $82,000 that we charge as rent unrestricted, because it's rent versus being a revolver?
Say
in the
that again?
revolver. So we're
Unrestricted.
charging them rent in the same way we charge other tenants rent?
Right.
Does that mean that that rent amount that we're charging them every year is unrestricted funds, because it's income in the same way we can use the rent from from Enable, from WIC, and from Self-Help? Or is that still tied up
They
in
all
the?
go into the building revolver that we use to offset utilities and custodians and things along that line.
Usually with a rent, a facilities rental account, like a town would have a bylaws on how you use that. I can give you an example of what Clinton's were. So some towns have it that you can only use that rental income for the building where that rent is incurred. Other towns have it that you can use it district-wide on the rent. So in Clinton, it was district-wide. Any rent money that I got in for the rental of facilities could be used in any building, any school building. But it depends on how the town has it set up.
So you're telling me that the total amount of rent that we take in every year can only be used in the Savage Center? It goes into our
No,
building
it depends
revolver.
on the
Now
bylaws.
they
of-
also pay rent in the Cleveland for extended day.
So does that mean they can only use it in the Cleveland? Do you see where I'm going? Like,
that-
Right.
I'm
I'd have to
I'm getting
double check
confused.
with
I
the-
thought I was on a good thread, and I think I pulled, and it's not a good
It's a
thread.
complicated
It
relationship.
depends on what the town bylaws are, which I can double check with Tom. But it's, if the town has it in that it can be used district-wide in any school building, then you can use it in any school building to do any, any repairs on
Right.
any school.
That makes more sense to me. Okay, so that was one of my questions. The second question is if this is similar to food service, is there a way that we can improve integration between the extended day administration and the school? I don't have the right words for it. So for food service, right? Everything comes home for my kids comes home. They get account numbers that are set up. I can contact somebody at the school. With extended day, it is completely 100% separate. And I'm wondering if there can be more integration between extended day and kind of the school system with regards to exchanges of information, attendance lists, those types of things.
I think that's what Chris is working on.
Yeah, we're trying, it's kind of a process, and those are part-time employees, so that, most of them anyways are part-time employees, but, they are sending home emails and things along that line now.
It's specific, this is not a bash on Chris. This is every time I've asked why I need to fill out multiple forms that I've filled out at the school and as well as at Extended Day, I'm told because they're completely separate organizations. But it seems like they're a little bit more integrated. I'm talking about efficiencies of information primarily experienced by the parents. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I'll just share one small
Yeah.
thing. So before I joined the school committee, one of the things I was really I want to look into is extended day, because I'm also a parent who uses it and have had a lot of frustrations that you've encountered. Before Dr. Thompson, the superintendent didn't want to have these conversations. Dr. Thompson has always had these conversations about extended day. And I think if we weren't where we are in so many other situations right now, we probably would have been moving along some progress with extended day quicker. Chris Capizzo, she is at the table in our school start time task force. I know she's involved more with the principals than previously. I know she meets with Dr. Thompson, she meets with Karen. I think we are going in that direction. It's just, the first thing was fixing the registration process. So thank goodness we no longer have to wait outside at 5 o'clock in the morning to register a kid. That's online.
We got to wait in the gym one year.
Yeah, right. I know, I was there too. We can now register online. She just sent out that parent survey and the student survey.
Yep.
And she sent Dr. Thompson some of the results that she had already. I do want to get her here at one of these meetings.
Yeah.
She keeps getting bumped just because of everything else that is going on. Yep. But she is on our long-term agenda. She was supposed to come next meeting. I think I'm bumping her again. So I don't have exact answers for you other than
just the fact that
it's
moving forward is helpful, and that does help explain kind of some of the financial stuff that you just explained helps me understand how this might have been. I can totally see how this might have been cobbled together at some point. Okay.
And you also, the extended day is not supposed to be a moneymaker. So so that's one of the reasons why you are able to, charge them. You're able to put some of your facilities expenses in there. We are, with regard to Chris and the extended day, we're definitely, her deposits, they're following the same suit as all the other deposits. They're going to be we have one person's going to be handling all the deposits, so now extended day as well as, the other departments are all bringing them to the same place to have a check and balance before they go to the town. So we're trying to keep extended day in the loop along with all the other departments that we have. Right. So with regard to that, we have that in place. It's just her money cannot be intermingled with the school's money. Right. She's self-sufficient, and it's if she needs to be bailed out, it's not like I can take money from the general fund to put money towards her.
It just, it has been a slow building process. Next year, we're looking at expanding to the Prescott with extended day. And again, trying to build capacity and serve more kids. But that also sometimes creates some growing pains of hiring staff and supervising another site, what have you. So, and there's also an issue of they don't have a lot of technology down there either. So that's another piece. So, and we do want to try to increase the programming there, which, and I've said before, I think we need to look at what the fee is, because it hasn't gone up in a long time. To offer some of those, extended enrichment sort of activities, which would be nice. We probably need to figure out a way to do that. So that's on the horizon too. So.
Karen, I know we were looking at this in the budget subcommittee, and there's some questions I already shared with you earlier, but one that just came to mind. Can you look into the recreation center and if they pay a rental fee? Because I know they sometimes use space here at the Savage.
The rec center?
The rec center, yeah. Because over the summer, with the summer camps, if there's bad weather, the Father Mac site is in here, and the Haas site is at the Coakley. And I know they then kind of compete, at least here, for space with the extended day program. So just more information about that partnership or
so
structure.
This, like I say, as I do more investigation and analysis, it would be another area that I think needs a check and balance and needs an internal control. So somebody should be keeping a tighter rein on the spreadsheets with regard to the rent that's coming in and the revenue that's coming in. So those are some of the things that we're going to be putting into place. And the more analysis and putting the puzzle together, the more you can find out what areas need more internal controls and more checks and balances. And in my opinion, the more checks and balances and internal controls you have, the more accurate your financial reports are. So that's some of the things that we're working on right now, is making sure that, for a really great example would be if you've got your payroll, you definitely want one person that's going to be entering it and another person's going to be checking it. So Those are some of the internal controls that I would like to start, putting in place. Again, like we do with the grants, one person is putting in the invoices and, setting up the spreadsheets, and the other person is checking to make sure it's in Munis properly. So those are some of the things that we're getting there. It is a little bit of a slow process because not only am I new, but you have your new Munis system that is causing us some glitches. So we're getting there. It's just a slow process, but I'm finding from the time I've gotten here till now, it's just been a huge amount of information that we've uncovered, and we're trying to, build from there. So we've made a lot of progress, but we still have, a lot to go. I feel pretty confident that next year it will be in a really good place, but this year is definitely a lot of analysis and just digging into reports to make sure that we can get everything. The biggest thing I feel is the internal, if you put the internal controls and the checks and balances, and then some of these issues that we're uncovering this year you won't have, because you have two eyes on it and not just one. And sometimes when you have a staff that, when you are short-staffed and you just have one person and they're just trying to keep their head above water, there's no time for really making sure that you have that check and balance. So that's what we're trying to do right now. And Terry's a great addition to the staff that has a little bit more financial background to help us with that. Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Yep. And then move on to budget.
Yeah, I think, Maya, do you want to share first a little bit about what we've been doing as a subcommittee, and then we can
Sure.
bring Dr. Thompson and Karen into the conversation?
Yeah, so the budget subcommittee has been meeting pretty frequently.
All the time.
Yeah, it seems like we're always here. And we've been really kind of diving into the budget. I think when you look at this updated FY21 public schools proposed budget, you guys already have the blue folder that we, for our first pass, but this was an updated version. If you go to the back page, it shows that our total budget last year was $415,000, and that was, but that included some capital money. But it gets confusing because the actual number approved at town meeting also had that like $590,000 in free cash that we said we were going to give back, and so like the town hall has been doing has started to do some work for FinCom for the FY21 budget and for the budget balancing committee, and they've looked at, okay, well, what should be our real baseline number, not including those capital expenditures, not including that $590,000 in free cash that we gave back, because that really wasn't ever part of our budget, and then looking at the 3.5% increase. So when we do the 3.5% increase, that gives us this bottom line number here, this target per town of $50,911,691. So if we go up by our 3.5%, that's our target number. This budget that you see here reflects these FY21 budget column, but there's also this two columns to the right. There's the green column, which is special education mandates, some things that we can't afford to put in our budget, but with our 3.5% cap, but are still expenses we need to deal with. And then the SOA plan, which is currently a blank column, but it's a column that's there. As Dr. Thompson said, the administration is working on the Student Opportunities Act plan. There's roughly $600,000 that we have to tell the state how we are going to spend that money to be closing achievement gaps. So we will be looking at what things could be in that plan. we may need to add some additional things that are not currently reflected in this budget, but we may also be able to take some of the things that we were already planning to do in the budget and transfer some of that over into that SOA column. So that's something that's in the works. I know that FinCom had a meeting last Friday, and they talked about the fact that there's roughly that $600,000 that needs to be spent on other things. From what I understand, it was roughly the consensus of FinCom that should be outside of our 3.5% cap, because it is, it's almost like a grant money that comes with strings attached. Like, you can have this money, but only if you promise to do new things with it. So it really shouldn't fall under our budget. I mean, it will fall under our budget, but it really shouldn't fall under the 3.5% cap. But we currently have $1.8 million in that special education column that are things that we can't currently fund in the 3.5% cap. Most of that, the vast majority of that, is the out-of-district tuitions. As we mentioned, we did get hit hard with those for FY20. We're getting hit even harder for FY21. As Lori mentioned when she was here, there have been 3 students who have moved in after, I believe it was October 1st is the date, and so we are not responsible for them in FY20, but we will be responsible for them in FY21, and that's almost $600,000 for those 3 students. That's a pretty big hit. I know that FinCom had talked about that as well, and recognizing that we may need to do something to look at how are we going to fund those things. But some of the things that the budget subcommittee has been doing, and Karen has been working tirelessly on this, is to comb through all of the salary line items and make sure that all the salaries were appropriate and that everybody is appropriately allocated to the right schools and the right accounts. It sounds so simple, you know, you've got a music teacher who's at the Prescott, so that teacher should be in the Prescott, but that teacher's not at the Prescott full-time, and so it's going to have to allocate between the schools that are sharing, and so that was a little bit complicated. The administration has also gone through and reviewed the instructional supplies requests, has looked at there were some things where they had school-based requests and district-based requests, so we've made sure that there's no redundancies there. And we've looked at just trimming back some of the instructional supplies requests. We had, the principals, I think that they could trim back a little bit. And then today we really looked at some of the revolving fund offsets, the athletic fund offset, the bus fee offset, the fine arts revolving account offset, and we made some increases to those estimates. And then you'll notice that the circuit breaker estimate has increased pretty drastically. So last year, we had a $2.1 million circuit breaker offset in our budget. We had developed that number with assuming that we would bring in $1.8 million in reimbursements for this year based on last year's out-of-district expenditures. And in addition to the $1.8 million, we were going to draw down $300,000 from our circuit breaker account. And so that's how we got to the 2.1 million. For this year, we have gone through the exercise of looking at the FY21 circuit breaker reimbursement will be based on the FY20 out-of-district tuitions. So we've looked at the total number of out-of-district tuitions, subtracted out the foundation budget, which is the amount that the district is responsible for ourselves there. It's like 4 times the foundation budget we're responsible for, and then the state reimburses a percentage. We've used a 70% estimate for their reimbursement, and that means that brought us to about $2.47 million in reimbursement. And then, but we had, as we worked on this with the town and did our 5-year projections, we had said we would be drawing down our circuit breaker account by about $300,000 a year. So we increased this estimate by another $285,000. The good news is that it helped bring our budget more into control. But the bad news about that is, as you saw in the revolving fund document that Karen gave us, she was currently projecting that at the end of FY20, we would have $885,000 in the circuit breaker account. So if we draw out another $285,000, then we'd be left with $600,000 going into next year. When we were doing our 5-year projections, we were looking at, let's draw down $300,000 a year. We would hoped at the end of this year we would have 1.2 million, not 600,000. But we've really been hit by out-of-district tuitions this year, and so we have had to expend that extra $600,000. I think that this is something when we go to the school committee has been invited to the FinCom meeting or the schools have been invited to the FinCom meeting on Monday. Of course, it's a public meeting, anybody's welcome to come. And we also have a budget balancing meeting on Wednesday, the first one of the season. And I think circuit breaker is always something that we discuss at those meetings. And I think one thing that we've also started to kind of look into is a special education reserve account. Some towns make use of that because, as you heard when Lori was here, we talked about the fact that if tuitions go up by more than 25%, then the state comes in and helps you with the extraordinary relief. But next year we're projecting that our out-of-district tuition will be over $7 million total, and then we would subtract out the circuit breaker. But so we're looking at $7 million, and then we'd have to go over that by 25%, almost $2 million before the state would kick in to help us. So we really need to have some sort of buffer in case we get hit with another perfect storm like this, where we just have had an unprecedented, at least for Norwood, increase in out-of-district placements. So that's where the budget is at right now.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And
I do have the revolving fund offsets that we did put in place in this budget. I can read them to you. The circuit breaker, as I have said, is $2,755,000. The fine arts, we took $30,000 from, we're going to take from their drama but they have a drama one and an arts one there too. So $30,000 of that is going to be an offset. Athletic revolving, we increased that to $100,000, and the transportation revolving, we increased that to $400,000.
Can I ask
Yeah.
questions?
Sure.
So, on the bottom line here, the totals. Does that percent change that you've calculated there include the special ed mandates, or does not include the special ed mandates?
I'm not sure where that like 4.82% comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is that number there that you see, 2 columns to the left is the target from the town,
Right.
which represents 3.5%. So I'm not sure exactly where that number is coming from.
Yeah, I guess the question I'm asking is, as I'm looking through here and I'm noticing some things that have been added in, are those reflected in that? It doesn't seem like the totals add up.
It doesn't include, correct me if I'm wrong, anything in the green, so the special ed mandates.
Does it include anything in yellow?
Yes.
Yes.
The yellow
Should include
is.
the yellow.
Yes.
If the number is in the gray, yes. If the number is in the green, no.
So you're telling me that every single item that's in the yellow here factors into our budget and doesn't have us go up more than 3.5%?
Right.
What's offset by the thing?
If it
Right, 'cause
is yellow.
Partly because it's offset by things like the circuit breaker and things like that.
The FY21 budget is offset by the
If you
first
get to
circuit
like
breaker?
page
Yeah.
5,
Okay, so so then we're draining, and that's what the circuit breaker getting down to 600,000.
Right, so if you,
Okay.
the circuit breaker number, you can see it's in that FY21 budget column, so it's like 3 lines up from the bottom. At the very bottom,
Oh, okay.
the 2,755,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was the difference between the 1.6 million and the 1.82 million over in the special ed mandate. I thought that's what it was being applied to.
So you
There was a
increased your,
2, it looks kind of similar, I'm not good with numbers.
you increased your circuit breaker offset by 655,000.
We're
From last
talking
year.
about offsetting, right? We're talking about that, this isn't done.
In this.
No, this is definitely not done.
We're talking about it.
And then we
Okay.
increased some of the other offsets. That's part of the reason we're able to bring those new positions in.
And the conversation with BBC is around essentially funding that circuit breaker for the future? Or paying for the special, because.
I think there's several conversations that we need to have with the Budget Balancing Committee. There's many things the Budget Balancing Committee will be doing. The Budget Balancing Committee will be looking at some of the trend analysis that the FinCom's been looking at. We'll be looking at, but we'll also be reviewing the override pledge, where we said, the 3.5%. But one of the other items in the override pledge was a statement that said something along the lines of, if there's a significant change in state reimbursements or state funding, then we would revisit. And I think that I shared with you guys last night, maybe? And I don't know if it's actually in our packets. I know Priscilla had printed it, but I don't know if she put it, I think she said she put it in our packets. Information about the foundation budget from the state and some of the changes that we're seeing in the foundation budget. And I think I'm hoping that we can have a conversation with FinCom and with the BBC about that. One of the things that you look at, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, we are looking at a significant increase in Chapter 70 funding. The reason we're looking at a significant increase in Chapter 70 funding is because our foundation budget has gone up by a lot. Part of the reason why our foundation budget has gone up is because the state has changed the formulas, right? And that's impacting all districts. But that's not the only thing that's impacting Norwood right now. If you look at our our English language learner population, from last year it was, I think, 340, and this year it's like 430. It's like up by more than 100 students, and that's after we passed the override.
Yeah.
We passed the override in June, and then in October we saw that significant increase in our ELL population compared to what we had last year for English language learners, and that is showing up in the state foundation budget, is saying that that's going to cost us an additional increase of money, and it's not an insignificant amount. The state's estimates are saying, because of this increase in English language learners, we expect you to have this much of an increment in your expenses. And to compensate us somewhat for that, they're offering, more in Chapter 70 funding. But, so certainly the $600,000 that's targeted for the Student Opportunities Act plan needs to be a separate thing. But I think that some of those revenues that are really set because of our significant increase in English language learners, and we have also seen an increase in our low income numbers and things like that, that we may need to discuss with the Budget Balancing Committee, what is the best way to allocate that money? What Norwood has done historically is bring in all revenues from the state, Chapter 70 and the unrestricted general government aid, the UGGA, and any other revenues, and kind of just treat it as all revenues, and then we split things apart. But the question is, how do we want to deal with this now that there's certain increases in funding that are really there because of special needs that are happening in the school side? Right. And so I really want to have a conversation with both FinCom and the BBC about that.
Well,
So-
something that Al said tonight as well made me think about that is because that McKinney-Vento is increasing, and they do get a reimbursement for McKinney-Vento.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of put into your pot as well. So, in years like such as this, I'm wondering if more of that revenue might be offset to cover, because it's kind of difficult to budget for McKinney-Vento when you really have no idea when you're going to get McKinney-Vento. The only thing you can do is budget for what you have currently, and maybe add a 3%, but.
Yeah, Dee.
So, I know there's been a lot of reclassification things. I'm just looking at page 2 above that highlighted new position. HS department chairs, dean stipends, it went from 0 in 2020 to 91,530 in 21. Is there a number somewhere else that is the reverse of this? Because most everything we have, it's kind of self-explanatory.
That, I can explain what that one is. Teresa and I are going to be working on reallocating the FY20 budget because a lot of these expenditures were just plunked there. But with regard to, I know that one in particular because the chairs, I just plunked all the stipends for the chairs in there because I wasn't sure where they had them in this FY20 budget.
Right,
so
but
that's
we-
going to have to be reallocated.
We did not increase by that much. We have
No.
We have
No, no,
budget
no.
somewhere else, just got reclassified.
Right,
Okay.
No.
because that includes several, all the department chairs,
course.
the dean stipends, all the different stipends.
Yeah, it's just a
And
big
we'll-
number that stuck out.
We'll have
Right.
more information on that at the next meeting.
Okay.
That's part of what Karen
That's
and
what
her team is still
Teresa and I
combing through
work-
with the
Terry
FY20,
and I are working on.
just with the Munis transition and other things. Where should the money
Right.
be listed?
So if you look, I mean, for instance, Dave, if you look at the next page down.
Yep.
Office supplies, middle school, because we're still trying to get everything to line up the way it's supposed to. If you look at that, the middle school had no office supplies this year. That is not true.
Good job, Dr. Face.
Yeah.
Right. That is not true.
That is not true.
And they'll have no office supplies next year.
Yeah, that's not
Right.
right.
So, I mean, you can see, and you look at the high school, they had none this year, they have 5,300 next year, because I like them better. I'm just being, so
Honestly,
there's definitely work that we gotta have to do.
This is it's so much better, but it's so much
Right.
more that's got to be done.
It's a laborious process.
The middle
Be
school
quoted
did
in the
not put
paper
in any
saying you like
office
the high
supplies.
school.
That's all right.
Just to give
Dr.
you a
Frazek
little
doesn't actually believe it.
idea of it's trying to change this FY20 budget the way they input it. So we have Anne Marie's budget that was in the P codes. And so Terry and I will take just one area, which we took just that one area where they plunked all the override money in. And you have to go through the entire account, and then you have to first budget transfer the money, and then after you get the budget transfer to switch over, you have to make sure you have the new account set. Because when you moved from your P codes to the Department of Ed codes, you did not have all of the Department of Ed codes in your budget. So
Right.
then you have to develop the new Department of Ed codes, and then you have to do the recodes. So it's like a 3-step process, which
Right.
you can talk to Terry. And then some of the other things that are kind of making it an even slower process is when they did the Munis, how they categorize that particular account. So like today, Terry was trying to do that one recode for that the override money, and one was not set up in the right code, so it wouldn't let her input it in there. So there's a lot of roadblocks that we're hitting right now, which is what's causing it to take longer to do that. But it's more just your new system and trying to move from to a just completely different system, from one that did not spread, might have one P code that had one account that is now spread over to 10 Department of Ed.
That's kind of the answer I was expecting, so thank you.
Right.
Dave, if you look at page 5, kind of 2/3 of the way down, you'll see teachers, high school, and that number is down by more than $200,000, and a lot of that would.
Sure.
There's different things that have been moved around, but those stipends, I believe, that
Yeah.
were included in that before, but really that should probably be categorized as an
Right.
administration expense because they're serving as administrators in that way.
Right, and this is part of the problem. The old system was not coded correctly.
Yep.
Things were put in enterprise, so you had
No.
to
Everybody's answered perfectly, thank you.
Like even contracted services, for example, a lot of Joe's area, he might have all these contracted services, and some of those contracted services, software was supposed to be in the nurses area, some of it might have been in the educational area, some might have been in his area, because they're district-wide, your technology infrastructure, and they're all lumped into one account.
Got it.
So it's really a huge undertaking of moving this to all the proper accounts, and that's why I'm extremely glad that
Yep.
that Terry's here, because she has a lot of experience not only with the financial packages like Munis, but also in journal entries and budget transfers and things like that. So now there's two people that can be doing this job rather than one person. So we're trying to get it done as quickly as possible, but not only that, it's been there's been some glitches with the Munis with the payroll recently, so it's been having us to pull off of that job, and a priority has now become, okay, let's look at the payroll and see why certain people haven't been put to the proper accounts there. Not that they're not getting paid, but they're not being put to the proper account in the Munis system. So it's become, it's like, okay, this is the priority we're working on right now, but oops, wait a minute, now this has become the priority. So it's kind of like you're stopping what you're doing here and go over there, because that fire is larger than the fire we're at.
Got it. Much more than, thank you,
Okay.
appreciate it.
I just have one
John.
quick clarifying
Sure.
question. Where does it say what the circuit breaker, or does it say what the circuit breaker remaining would be?
But the circuit breaker, what would be?
The remaining, so
It doesn't show that.
it doesn't show that, okay, so I
No,
didn't miss
because,
that, okay.
no, it's
We were
in,
estimating it from this report that I gave you.
Is it difficult to add that in? I feel like that would be one of, an important piece of information as we continue to go through.
No,
like,
we can add that. We could put a
just
note
for
at the
people like
bottom.
me, it's 10 o'clock, I'm not good at numbers, if we
Yeah.
can just put a note in that, like, this would mean we would have this much in the circuit breaker.
And the town has requested an analysis of the circuit breaker over the last few years.
Yeah.
So we could add another page, which would be the analysis of the circuit breaker.
Oh, I just need one number that says,
Okay.
this with this, assuming that we sucked out, whatever, $655,000 from the circuit breaker, that means we would have this much starting FY '21 in circuit breaker
Right.
to carry over. Does that
no,
make
of course,
sense?
there's a whole lot of estimates
Estimate-
built in
estimates.
there, and one of them is that 70% number, which we actually think is somewhat conservative. The state has been reimbursing a little bit more than 70% recently. Supposed to reimburse 75%, but they almost never do, right?
It's
Well-
up to 75% is
Yeah.
the formula.
Right. So the formula is changing, and the number is supposed to go up, and we're supposed to get transportation. So that is a conservative estimate.
Because I
Conservative
think
estimates are
what we
fine.
took was,
Those are good.
Right.
what we took was, we estimated the foundation, and then we had like 800 left at this time, at this snapshot in time, and then we took 200 from
Yeah,
there.
you guys are just obviously considering it in your
Right.
conversations because you all knew the number off the top of your head. If it could just be on paper,
Yeah.
that would just
Okay.
be helpful
No.
for the rest of us.
Let's put a note at the bottom.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would say though to Joan and Dave, if you're looking through this and you have questions, definitely get it to Dr. Thompson. I mean, we're meeting again at 9:30 tomorrow morning as a subcommittee. I don't expect you to get us anything by then, but I mean, Maya and I have had tons of questions in the subcommittee. Karen and her team have been amazing. Dr. Thompson, like we've really been asking a lot of these questions, but having other people look at it and ask questions is helpful. So just get them to Dave.
I'll also say that we have been trying really hard to keep up with the budget subcommittee minutes and trying to give you guys information about what's going on with that. So we just approved minutes today from our February 14th meeting, so those will get released to everybody. Our meeting today ended at 3 p.m., so I have not yet typed up minutes from today's meeting, and it won't have it
I'm not
have it
gonna
done
have it to
at
approve
9:30
at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Come on.
Slacker.
Teresa, she's slipping.
I know. I was just telling telling her how amazing her minutes are earlier today, and now.
I mean, she used to be able to drive to hockey practice and type at the same time.
You can always join Teresa and I at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I know. All three of us. You probably did not like us that night. I try to pre-send my emails, but when they're like responding, then I just respond.
Yeah, get up
You
and
all
voice
need some
it, what's wrong with you.
He's like, why are we all telling me?
What's wrong with you people?
We're like in bed, like.
Okay, maybe we're too punchy now.
But any other questions on the budget
No.
process? We'll keep you posted. You know, as
Great.
Maya said, we do go to FinCom on Monday, budget balancing on Wednesday, so a lot will be happening in between now and when we are back as a school committee.
But just to remind everybody, we have 3 meetings scheduled in March.
Yes.
At the 3rd meeting in March is our budget hearing. At that point, we should have our budget finalized, and we need to send it to the town.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're seeing, everything you're looking at here is all preliminary, all subject to vote of school committee. There'll be plenty of opportunities to continue this discussion.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I am cognizant of the time, and I know we're not going to cover everything on the agenda. I do want to quickly discuss Dr. Thompson's contract. I think that should be a pretty quick update. And if the committee is okay with that, I would like to at least give you the policy update, because I don't think that'll take too long either, but also give you some things to think about for us. So as you all know, we've been meeting in executive session multiple times to discuss Dr. Thompson's contract. We are in a place as a committee with Dr. Thompson where we have agreed on terms. We are still waiting for some final language recommendations from our attorney, but we have agreed on some terms that we'll want to discuss and vote on here in open session. We are offering Dr. Thompson a 4-year contract starting on July 1st, 2020. And with this contract is a 2.5% salary increase.
For the first year.
For the first year. Thank you.
Motion to approve the terms of the contract is you've just announced.
Yes. 4-year contract starting July 1st and a 2.5% salary increase for year 1.
A second?
Second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
There you go.
Welcome back, Mr. Conlon.
Do you
I haven't gone very far, but.
All right, beautiful. So, Dr. Gibble, would you like to give them a quick update on what we've been working on in the policy subcommittee?
Sure. You have 2 sets of minutes in your packet. One is from January 6th. The vast majority of that meeting was spent actually strategizing timelines and how and when we were going to be working on things like MOUs with the PTOs, fundraising policies, the budget transfer policy, handbooks, wellness policy, safety and tech policies, social media policy, and communication policies. It's safe to say that those are all upcoming in the next couple, after budget season.
Yes, post-budget.
Post-budget. We did recommend that Karen, we did recommend continuing to investigate the Mass Policy Audit, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They run a great, very affordable service that looks at your policies, keeps them up to date, and kind of works with you in an ongoing process. And we also decided that when we do come back from budget season, we will prioritize work on the budget transfer policy. So that was from January 6th. From February 10th, the other set of minutes, we spent most of that time with Lori Semino from Director of Student Services. This meeting followed almost immediately after Lori's presentation here. We will be undergoing a normal DESE audit around special education.
Yeah.
And as part of that, Lori sat down and looked at our policies to see which ones were in compliance and which ones could, not just in compliance, which ones could be improved upon and enhanced. And so there are 3 policies, which I'm not going to go over right now, but they are included in your packet that Lori drafted from her expertise working through DESE audits before, which we are recommending that you look at and provide me with feedback before the next meeting so that we can vote on final policies.
Yeah, and what Joan did in the minutes she typed up, there are 16 different policies that are on Lori's radar. Some are okay, and we identified what those are, but more are not okay and need either slight audits or are going to be brand new policies. So we just wanted you to see 3 tonight. Again, just take some time before the next meeting to review it, and we'll be getting more from Lori soon. And we meet as a policy subcommittee March 13th and also March 26th are our meetings.
Like
Should
March,
write those
no, March
down.
10th is on my, no,
March
maybe that was a
10th?
discard date. All
That might be something else, but
Okay.
pretty sure it's the 13th and 26th.
right, we're good.
Yeah. All right. Again, it is late. We can move the mid-year cycle check-in for Dr. Thompson to the next meeting because I want to make sure we spend some good time on that. If you haven't already, just review the document that I shared with you on some questions that we wanted you to think about. We also shared a proposed timeline for moving forward. And then we just shared the document on his goals and the indicators that we all agreed on in the fall. So if you can come prepared to the next meeting to talk about that. Dr. Thompson also shared with us the weekly update that he gives us on Fridays. He's been compiling in a document as a way for us to review some progress and indicators there. Move the protocols to the next meeting as well.
Can we please do the,
Well, I don't know. How do people feel when you reviewed it?
I would like to discuss the protocols.
I'm a night owl, so I will be here as long as you need me. You tell me what you guys are feeling.
Well, I feel that we really, Maura would love to have some feedback. I think she would. Is that relevant?
I mean, there's not significant changes, right, from our last protocol document. I think you like
No.
compiled and condensed some things.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to provide feedback, right?
Yep.
Yep.
My only one concern question is around the technology that we were saying we wanted to try to get back in, be able to use at our meetings. And we had sent our attorney some questions around that. Did you see Maya's email that forwarded the document from our attorney?
Right. I really would recommend that everybody make sure you read
Yeah.
the advice from our attorney before we
Yeah.
make a decision on that.
Yeah.
Tech. Okay.
I see it.
Just because open meeting law and, you know, if I had a question around, like, if we use our personal devices, you know, what does that mean for the personal information? Or, you know, like in my case, this is my business computer and I have
Yeah.
like client information that's confidential and,
Now that I think about it, it's like, I love the idea and I'd love to save trees, but it also opens up a whole new can of worms.
well, read Melissa's.
I'll read Melissa's.
Yeah,
absolutely.
she answered our questions and she sent us an article that she had recommended we all consider.
Got it.
Right, but something to consider is a Chromebook specifically for
Right.
here.
Yeah, it would definitely reduce a lot of issues if we used school-issued technology as opposed to
Right.
bringing in our personal devices.
Right.
Yeah.
Which there is a precedent for other committees in town who also
Absolutely.
do that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And, you know, we do have many Chromebooks throughout the district with the new one-to-one initiative, and so I think it would not be a significant expense to provide 5 to the school committee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get the last ones that they need to recycle.
Right. I mean,
Even if we can just use them here, even if they're not, I don't get to take it home, like just being able to access.
There-
Right.
Right, there actually is a cart that's in the technology department that could be dropped, they can be dropped off, you sign in, you leave them here, and that's it.
Did you, it used to have a big TV on it with a strap?
No, it did not. However, if you like that version, we can get it for you.
Could we please?
All right, we're all punchy now, there we go. All right.
All right,
Sorry.
so we'll resume the conversation protocols, check that email and advice from our attorney. We can go over the interface and mental health data next time because I want to spend some time sharing that with you. We're already moving the legislative advocacy discussion. So acceptance of 2 donations?
Yes, we have 2
Dr.
donations. Actually had a presentation on the first one, which is the Christmas Holiday Concert Committee's $6,500 donation to the Fine Arts Music Department. And the second is Bay State Textiles for a grand total of $523. Those are 2 donations.
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, wonderful. School committee addenda. Maya, do you have anything tonight?
I just wanted to congratulate some of our winter athletic teams that have made it to the tournament. Congratulations to the boys hockey team, the girls hockey team, and the girls basketball team for all being invited to participate in the tournament. And best wishes to the girls hockey and girls basketball, which will be playing again.
Great. Joe?
I have no agenda at this time, thank you.
Dave?
I had one prepared to bring Maura some emotions, but I will hold that until she's present.
Okay, sounds good. So just a quick update for the committee. What's also in your packet but wasn't meant to be discussed tonight, just for your FYI, was minutes from our last school start time task force. So we are getting closer at the task force to coming before the school committee with a proposal. We meet again on Monday, and what I just wanted to ask you, if you could, before Monday at 4. It can literally be at 3:59, but before Monday at 4, if you just review the last minute, if you see anything on here and you're like, I desperately want to make sure that that task force tells me X. Tell me what X is, because we only have 2 more meetings, and I feel like we have a pretty good plan as a task force with what we're coming with, but I just want to, if you have a burning question, just let me know by Monday, if you can. And then just to let the community know, the Teacher of the Year Awards that the Masons at Orion Lodge sponsor every year, the nomination process is open. So if you want to nominate a teacher, it is due by March 13th. And you can go on the Masons website to do that.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, because we were productive in our executive session earlier and do not need to go back in. So, motion by Dave, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's 10:30, which are